All right, Peter, we're live. How's everyone doing out there? Thank you for joining us on what I'm certain will be a very interesting live stream. We're waiting on Alexander to join us. He's having some technical difficulties, so I apologize for the 15-minute delay. Hello, Spartan Warrior Queen. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for moderating as well. We really appreciate it. We have in Moscow, host of RT's Crosstalk, Mr. Peter Lavelle. Peter, how are you doing today, this Friday afternoon?
Well, from my faraway perch, I'm watching a pre-revolutionary moment being played out in the United States. I mean, this is real, folks. This is really very real. And this is the beginning of something. This has started a chain of events that could end, and I think will end very, very badly. Because if you look at the history of revolutions in the modern period, the United States is playing pretty closely to the playbook. Okay, and this is scary because, first of all, more than anything else, you have to, what is really the very premise of the modern nation state is that the police have the legitimate use of violence. They are the only ones, we can say the military also, but usually they should be abroad, but we'll talk about that in this podcast. They're involved in this now, which adds to this toxic brew. But if the police stand down in the face of violence, then they've abrogated their responsibility. That happened in Minneapolis. That was the catalyst for the rest, okay? That the authorities will stand down in the face of illegitimate use of violence by citizens. And so when that happens, then that starts a chain of events that may and is being proven to be very difficult to control. And you have members of the political establishment that refused to condemn violence and looting. Looting isn't a form of violence. That was that moron woman that got the 1619, she wrote that 1619 essay that, you know, we can go into that if you want, that's another rabbit hole. But, you know, now you're twisting words. Now you're twisting words. Looting isn't violence. Well,
the New York Times.
In New York, yeah, New York Times. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and you have also the refusal to prosecute people in Los Angeles and in New York. So this is aiding and abetting a very toxic social behavior. These people that are committing, people are protesting, which is perfectly fine. People that are breaking the law, because protesting isn't breaking the law. People that break the law should be prosecuted. They're not being prosecuted. As a matter of fact, they're being lionized by some people. We have the element of ANTIFA, which I don't know to what degree they're involved in this. I truly believe that they are. The FBI has been monitoring their behavior for years and very frustrated by it because of social media and whatnot. But, and then we have the political class, the media class, academia, Hollywood, and the tech world all aligning up against Trump. This is the next impeachment attempt, okay? This is the next one. What I find very, very disturbing is that now it appears, let's be careful with our words, it appears that there is a break in the ranks of the military. That is a critical juncture. That is a truly critical juncture because their refusal, if and when, because Trump is threatened and he threatens a lot and doesn't come through, but there's public statements that the military shouldn't or would question an order from the President of the United States. Let's be very clear, Alex. The US military has been involved in US domestic crises since Eisenhower. That's not new, okay? The talking heads in the liberal media make it sound like this is unprecedented. No, it's not unprecedented, okay? Little Rock, okay? Eisenhower, a Republican Eisenhower, all right? And all the way up to the present here. So this isn't unprecedented. And of course you have a media that is lying, absolutely lying. They refuse to condemn the looting. They refuse to condemn the violence. They say the violence is in only one direction. Black men are not unarmed black men are not being killed every single day. That is an urban myth that is perpetuated over and over again. The FBI has the stats. The Washington Post has the stats. This is all overblown. Candace Owen has come out with her own video about this. a very compelling video of how she feels about it. And I echo her sentiments very, very much. This is infantilizing minorities and Black people all over again. Okay, I see Alex here.
Yeah, he's got this fuzzy. Alexander's here.
I'm afraid it's the only thing I
mobile.
can do, guys. It's with my phone.
Okay. Okay. Well, Alexander, thank you for joining us. I mean, your picture's not
Great.
the greatest, but we'll.
Can you turn off that light and open the window?
Yeah.
I've tried everything. Let me see it again.
I mean, I tend to think of you as a saintly person, but you look like a saint. Okay.
Let's see if you can get at least a little bit of a better picture. More importantly, Alexander, say a few words. Let's see how your audio is.
Well, I'm here anyway. I hope everybody can hear me. I don't know what's happening because I've never had this problem before on the computer. But can people hear?
Okay, it's better. It's better. Just we can hear you. I think people.
Yeah,
can
I
hear
know.
you. Right.
I know this is a ruse. You don't want everyone to see your haircut. I know it. I figured it out.
All right, Alexander. Thank you for joining. We started up, everybody. So, okay, let's. We got a lot to cover, and so welcome everybody wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. Alexander Peter was kind of giving an overview as to what's going on and explaining the concern that he has, and how a lot of this is happened over and over again in history. This is not anything new. If you've studied history, you can kind of see what's happening in the United States. And I agree with you, Peter, the fact that you're mentioning, or at least, the Trump White House is mentioning bringing in the National Guard and military. I think we were talking before we did the show, Pat Buchanan outlined 2 or 3 times in US history when that was actually done, where they actually did bring in the military to quell riots. So it's not a groundbreaking thing. It's not an earth-shattering thing.
What's very truly problematic in this situation, it's not unprecedented. People that say that don't know about history, and people that don't know about history work in mainstream media. That's a job qualification. Be ahistorical, and you can talk about the news. That's what we see 24/7 in the mainstream media. Okay. The fact that the problem is, and maybe Alexander McCuris can help me out on this one here, is that Trump is being, again, and he's been put into a corner, and he's allowing himself to be put into a corner, is that we have this dilemma. And for non-Americans, I'll make it very, very a short, concise definition of the dilemma that an American president deals with here, is that the United States is a federation of states. It's a republic of 50 states. And it is remarkably enough a decentralized power. And so governors have enormous power in their own states. Now, often a governor will ask for assistance, and then we come into this situation where a governor may be resistant. And we go back to the Article 10 of the Constitution. The United States fought a civil war over the interpretation of federal versus state law. And of course, that cardinal issue was slavery. And so we're being faced with, again, the dilemma that Trump faces, that if he backs down or appears to be weak, then it's going to encourage these events to keep unfolding, to have him removed from power. This is impeachment, what, 3.0, 4.0? I've lost track, okay? But see, Trump has put himself, he's threatened, he's suggested, and now he has to do one thing or another. And there's no good outcome, at least the way it's going to be received by his political enemies.
Yeah. Well, I was just checking now, and it struck me. I noticed, for example, that Eisenhower. I wanted to just check on this, but in the 50s, he used the 101st Airborne Division to try and enforce a Supreme Court decision involving, busing Black people to schools in the American South. So it's desegregation, exactly. So I mean, and that's Eisenhower. So that's a conservative Republican president, a military man also. So the use of the military in the United States is not by any means extraordinary. I mean, I can think of any number of cases. I mean, there was obviously the Civil War, but we don't really want to talk about the Civil War because this is
have 1968. Johnson.
1968 riots. There was events. There was the dispersal by the Hoover administration, of the veterans protests in Washington. As I said, there was Eisenhower using the military to enforce a Supreme Court decision in the 1950s. And it's not the unique or extraordinary or unconstitutional step that people seem to be saying that it is. And I think that's absolutely clear about this. Now, I think that Trump has perhaps used some very, very strong language, but as far as I can see, he's never done anything unconstitutional and illegal. And just look at the language the other side is using. I mean, it seems to me that if you compare what Trump is saying with some of the things that have been said about him, and about some of the things that people who want to restore some kind of order to American cities are saying, as opposed to the people who are protesting against the use of the military for that purpose.
Alex, but what they want to see, this is what these precursors to a pre-revolutionary moment want. They want this. They're baiting. They want Trump to do this. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's be clear. This is called the Insurrection Act.
Yeah.
It is, if Trump decides to send the military into American cities, it is absolutely constitutional. It is not against the law. However, this is where we get into the realm, politics and policy. Is it good politics? Is it good policy? Okay, yeah. It's good policy because it's legal. Is it good politics? Well, that's up to debate, and that's what we've been debating for 3.5 years. Okay,
I'm just going to make a point there, which is, of course, that the President of the United States has an overall responsibility for maintaining law and order across the United States. I say that because that's the function of every government. A government which does nothing whilst cities explode in riots across the United States. I think that for Trump to do nothing at all, to let this thing burn itself out in that way, would be more politically damaging for him than, as I said, for him to act. Where I think he's got wrong, and I think this is perhaps where I feel that perhaps he would have been more wise, is I think he should have said, perhaps more explicitly than he's done, that though there's an extraordinary amount of violence, there are underlying structural problems in the United States that far precede his time as president. There are issues of race relations in the United States for which he is not responsible. He's only been president for 3 years. So yes, he has to deal with this crisis that exists now. He is also opposed to the people who are acting in this, illegal way, and that he will uphold the law and act to restore order, but that he does understand that there are problems in the United States which need addressing. So maybe he's not been as strong in saying that as perhaps it would be politically wise for him to be in this situation. But bear in mind, I come back to what I've said. Look at what the other side is saying about him. They're not helping the president in this situation, which I think they ought to be doing, because everybody, I would have thought, in any responsible country has a responsibility if they have any kind of political position.
Okay, but Alex, these people have being responsible? Are you kidding me? I mean, well, it was 2 weeks ago you were immoral and a moron for not practicing social distancing, and now these protests and riots, and they don't. Oh, what is it? Is it halftime for a COVID-19? Are we in the halftime event for this? No, these people, they will forget everything that they have said. They're totally irresponsible, and they're aiding and abetting the destruction and the collapse of the political system in the United States. They are a player. They are a key player in all of this. And for what? To take out a president? The job numbers are going to come out in a few hours, okay? The economy is falling off the cliff, and you're worried about the orange man again. This is psychotic.
This is what it's all about. It's all about removing Trump, the entire thing, and it's all about seizing power. That's what this whole thing is about, whether you're talking about the reaction to the pandemic and how the media reacted to the pandemic, or whether you're looking at these riots. This is all about removing Trump. The whole damn thing. I think it doesn't matter what Trump says at this point. It really doesn't. Whatever he says, they would have exactly reacted in the same way. And now they see their opening to remove him.
I would just have a caveat on that, okay? I would have liked an Oval Office address to the nation. And to kind of throw in a bit of what Alexander McKira said here, is that the underlying problems for this to have happened isn't Trump's fault, okay? No. Trump isn't, he wasn't at the start of the Republic, okay? He wasn't there at the Civil War. He wasn't in power when Clinton deregulated everything. He wasn't in power when, under George W. Bush and Barack Obama, titans of American industry shuttered the country of factories and workers, okay? But this would have been a moment, a populist moment, that's what he's supposed to be after all, to talk about some of the fundamental structural problems in the United States. And that we've seen that the reactions to the lockdown and the flaming, the racial flaming of a racial incident, which was horrific, and we saw it. But there's a backstory to that also that the mainstream doesn't want to cover. So Trump has got all these spears and arrows coming at him. He needs, and I think he's missed the moment, he needs to grasp the narrative. Again, he's stumbled here. He has to grasp it. People, look, the Chicago Convention was televised live in 1968. Television covered live the reaction to the death of Martin Luther King. And the chaos that they saw in the streets got Nixon elected in 68. So the people of reason, of common sense, have to marshal their resources, because a recent polls come out, I think in the last 12 hours, is that 58%, including Democrats, are not against Trump using the military in American cities here. See, the sentiment is different on the ground, okay? Yeah. And if you go to American cities from east to west, go to Black communities, go to Black cities, they want more policing, they don't want less, okay? Well, all of this stuff is nonsense that the media is pouring out.
Well, this is absolutely the point, because I'm going to say something else, which is I would not be at all surprised if, despite the fact that he hasn't perhaps calibrated his language as carefully as he could have done, it will in the end work out to his advantage, because we have a situation where some people seem to be, let me put it like this, not unhappy to see these riots, and giving them some encouragement, which I'm glad you say what you said about, Black people, especially if they're poor Black people, are very often the kind of people who suffer most from these riots. They're the people who have the small shops, the small businesses, who are trying to lead normal lives, and they're going to find themselves facing a very violent situation in their neighborhoods. They will look to someone to restore a measure of order and law in their communities so that they can go about their normal lives. They're not getting that from the people who, as I said, seem not unhappy to see these protests, but they are seeing it, however confusingly and inarticulately, from Donald Trump. So I am not at all surprised that most people in the United States would not be adverse to seeing the military used in US cities. I'm going to say something also, by the way. I mean, the military would not just be going into those cities, they would be going in within a structure of law. The Constitution would not be suspended. It would still be there. There would still be courts. There would still be law. We mustn't treat the presence of the military as something excessive or extraordinary. The only reason it is arising is because of this extraordinary situation and the fact that some state governments don't seem to be getting a grip on the situation, which in my opinion, by the way, they could do.
Yes, they refuse to do it, okay? Let's be very clear. I want our viewers to understand, and particularly if you don't know much about the American legal system, American soldiers have no authority to arrest anyone inside of the United States, okay? The military would be used as auxiliary to back up National Guard and local and federal and state police, okay? They would not be taking point. As a matter of fact, they would be auxiliary and logistic more than anything else, and to show a force, of course, that's part of it as well. Look, I don't, no American wants to be, quote unquote, occupied by the US military. What the talking heads on the liberal channels will tell you that this is an occupation and battle space and all of that. Most people would say, put out the fire for God's sake. You know, after MSNBC and CNN, when the cameras leave, Ferguson in Baltimore and Minneapolis, you know, what's left? What's left? Poor people that don't have businesses, don't have transportation, have nothing left. When the cameras are gone, it disappears. But those people lived through that agony, maybe for the rest of their life. Look at Ferguson, look at Baltimore. They haven't recovered at all.
No.
You think they care? This is my point. I mean, Trump, whatever he would have said, the course was set. The minute this happened to Floyd, and the minute they got this on video, the course was set. The media was mobilized. The social media was mobilized. We can never forget that at this moment in time, the neoliberal globalist elites, they control the universities, they control big tech, they control just about every Fortune 500 company. They control it all. They control everything. They control the NGOs. They control the stormtroopers, otherwise known as Antifa, that are going onto the streets. They control the entire narrative. I think the minute they got that on video, that was the opening. And I say that because I think they all understood one thing. Through the 3 years of Russiagate and the 3 years of Ukrainegate and all the nonsense that they have been peddling, they understood they cannot beat Trump at the ballot box. So to me, this is a regime change operation. There's a reason I put the October Revolution there and I draw parallels, because I really think what we're seeing right now is a regime change. And it doesn't have to be the majority, because the Bolsheviks, though their name is and it is the big party, they weren't the vast majority, but they still seized power. They seized power. And of course, a lot of it started in St. Petersburg. That's where it started. So I started to think St. Petersburg, Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. My mind starts turning to 1917. And I think history does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme, as Mark Twain said. So the Bolsheviks, to me, are very much like the neoliberals. Antifa are those stormtroopers that maybe you can call them the Reds. I think of Tsar Nicholas and his family, and Tsar Nicholas, who married Alexandra, and there were the rumors going around that she was under the spell of Rasputin, and Rasputin was actually there. You guys know this stuff much better than I do, and Rasputin was actually controlling the levers of government while Nicholas was all fighting World War I, which is a complete disaster. And so many people were out of work and struggling and suffering. And here you have a 3-4 year narrative of Trump is under the spell of Putin, and Putin is whispering how to control the United States. And you have Russiagate and Ukrainegate. Meanwhile, you have this pandemic, which to me is very much like World War I, and people are losing their jobs and 30 million unemployed, and people are suffering. And all of a sudden you have the spark. You have that damn spark, which is this Floyd video. Well, and it gets out there, and the revolution is set. It's taken its course, and they're burning churches. They're burning churches. They're vandalizing monuments, burning churches. They burned a church, everybody, a Christian church. They're vandalizing monuments. They're taking down statues. They're destroying history. Does this sound familiar, anybody? Destroying religion,
Alex, can I just interrupt?
History, destroying monuments.
I think you might be able to get me with sort of the proper camera in my meeting. It says that the host will now let you in. So I think it's just about. I admitted you in. I don't know why it's taken so long.
Now you got four
apparently
pictures.
The Zoom people want to see you better, okay?
Yeah. Well, there's a window opening for you, Alexander. So
let's hope it comes through.
Anyway, one final word, Peter. They're making, as Alexandra's trying to log in, you have to kneel. Kneel. Subjugate yourself. Kneel. Kneel to the new religion. Don't kneel to God.
It was so disgusting.
But kneel to the wokeness.
Yes.
Kneel to the God of equality and diversity, which is our strength. What the hell is going on?
Let's keep with your analogy.
There you go, Alexander.
With the Russian Revolution,
Log off your phone, Alexander.
Yeah,
just shut your phone off.
You can look at the French Revolution as well. It's just that when the legitimate ruling order, number one, loses confidence in itself to rule. Number two is infiltrated by dissent from outside. And I mean, I think we're looking at the military. I mean, this Mattis interview. I mean, what a farce. I mean, yes. He should keep his mouth shut. Okay, he was one of the quote unquote adults in the room. Around Trump. No, it's all the adults in the room that created this nonsense here. I mean, it is similar in many facets. Again, when you have the rule of law is suspended, okay, where you refuse to enforce the law. That is a very critical pre-revolutionary moment, okay? Because people are afraid. People are terribly afraid, particularly if you're poor. See, this is a revolution that is being played out. It's a revolution from top against the working class. This is the first time this has ever happened. It's a revolutionary movement against working people. Okay, and you have all of the elites that you just mentioned, they're all arrayed, okay, to go after the working class, because the working class, they're such, they're such, they're like inertia for these elites, okay, and they're pesky because they vote for people like Trump, okay, that's what makes them really angry as well. And the whole thing, you were giving the myths and the mythologies about what were used against the Tsarist regime. Well, the myth here is systemic racism in America, which is not true. Okay, it's simply not true, because all of these people that you just mentioned, they know it's true. They lie to us, and they know it is a problem of inequality and transfer of wealth to the top. See, all of the organizations and people you mentioned, Alex, they benefit from that. They benefit from it. And nobody wants to talk about class. It's on, go check out Crosstalk today. We did a program, Class versus Racism, okay? And I had two very distinguished Black guests, and we had a very, very interesting discussion. But the thing is that revolutions happen when state authority refuses to exercise its rights and prerogatives. And this is what they're trying to paint Trump into.
Yes, I have to say, I don't get the sense, to be frank, that there is a critical revolutionary moment in the United States.
I keep saying
yes. What I do think is happening is that, as I said, Trump has acted as a catalyst for fundamental divisions within American society, which have been there for a long time, and which the political system seems to be struggling to answer to provide answers to. Not because the democratic constitutional system is defective, in my opinion, but because there is an element of the political class who, frankly, are not prepared to accept the legitimacy of his election, and they criticize him. And they criticize him for this continuously. But I don't think this is going to result in the kind of revolutionary situation that we saw in Russia in 1917. I don't think we're there. But what I do think we're going to see is deepening electoral problems in the United States. And if Donald Trump loses in November, and I think this is all about an election, winning the election in November, if he loses the election in November, there will be a lot of very embittered and very angry people in the United States. And those divisions are going to grow bigger, and the political system is going to become weaker. And that's where I think the problems of the United States are. So I don't personally see some, great uprising that's going to result in, the White House being stormed or anything of that kind between now and November. But what I do see is something which, as a Greek, we have this wonderful word, which you find in Thucydides, which is stasis. This is a situation where the system has become completely blocked. There is no obvious way forward. And ultimately that causes problems over time to accumulate until the whole thing starts to crash down. I think that is the real danger in the United States now.
Yeah, but I think, Alex, you know, and we've said in our weekly chats over the last few months, is that, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, the jobs numbers are going to come out in a few hours, and it's, again, it's catastrophic here. This is going to brew on, okay? And I do think it is about the election, and I'll even go further, is that no matter what the election outcome is, half the country won't see it as legitimate. And so I'm going to agree with you in that sense, because the system is frozen up right now. But for me, what is tragic is that so many people's lives are being destroyed, either because of the lockdown and the economic turndown, and then with this violence, which has been completely legitimized by the mainstream and mainstream elites. Okay, is that this sense of hopelessness will descend and be maintained, and never let a crisis go to waste, right? I mean, they're not going to let this go. They're not going to let this go, all right? And so I wouldn't be surprised if this is just this is phase one. Now, will they succeed? I don't know, but I mean, I think quite logically, and if we look at after the 2016 election, this started before the inauguration, and up to this day, there's these attempts to undermine and remove Donald Trump. This is obviously, in my mind, another attempt at that, okay? But the stakes are so incredibly high.
Well,
so incredibly high.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, you guys, I mean, and not everyone's gonna like what I'm gonna say. I mean, just what exactly has Trump changed?
Well, very little. I mean,
what? I mean, this is psychotic.
Yeah.
This is psychotic. Okay. All right. He didn't start any new wars. Wow, that's a great litmus test for a leader. Didn't start a war. Okay. Okay. All right. The tax cut. Well, that didn't affect average people very much. Okay. I mean, Trump is actually helping the people that hate him the most.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. It's remarkable. Okay, so I mean, it is so bizarre. It is so psychotic. It's because of a person. It's not about policies. I mean, when they had the bailout / stimulus, who was first in line? Who got concierge service? The rich. And who did he listen to? The rich. This is so bizarre.
I mean, I get just a few points. I mean, firstly, and going back to Russia 1917 and before, I mean, one of the things I would say is political conflict in Russia had a long history before 1917. It didn't just start in 1917. And one of the parallels I think it is legitimate to make is that, of course, there was massive factional infighting within the political elite itself. It got worse and worse right up to the revolution. And in fact, not only that, but there were people within the elite who were quite happy to bring down the entire political system in order to try and, you know, as they thought, gain power through it. And it was what they didn't seem to realize is that ultimately their power derived from the political system. The people who were engaging in that elite infighting were not the ones who in the end won. They were the ones who were driven out along with all the other members of the elite. But that's a historical point. There is a political point, which I simply don't understand, and it is about Donald Trump. And perhaps people who have a better granular understanding of the United States can explain to me. As I understand it, Minnesota, which is where this whole thing began, is a liberal state. The governor there is a liberal. I understand Amy Klobuchar is the senator. I understand it has a long history of liberalism going all the way back to the 1960s. Exactly, progressivism going all the way back to the 1960s and beyond. I understand even Eugene McCarthy started his career there. So why does nobody say that if there are problems with policing in Minnesota, this is the responsibility of the people who are running the state of Minnesota? What does how is he responsible for what happened to Floyd given that he is not responsible for the police there. His opponents are. I mean, I don't understand why he doesn't make that point. Yeah, well, why doesn't he make it? Well, why doesn't he say
even if he did? My point is out there. Just even if Trump made that point, no one, the media, the social media, the big tech, all these people on the streets, they wouldn't care. That's my point. It doesn't matter.
But he does have the ability as president, that's his one big advantage, to cut through. And he does cut through. He can do it through Twitter. He can do what Peter said. He can go into the Oval Office and address the nation and talk to them directly there.
I agree. He does cut through it. He cuts through to people who are listening and who have some reason and who want to evaluate. But the minute this event happened and they were able to get people out on the streets, to me, the dynamic changed. Before, they were never able to get people out in the streets. You couldn't get people out in the streets for Russiagate or for Ukrainegate. But for this, they accomplished, to me, this is like a death by 1,000 cuts in a way. They had Russiagate, it didn't work. They had Ukrainegate, but this event, they were finally able, regardless of who was at fault, or Trump or Minneapolis or the mayor could have done this or said that. The minute this happened, they were able to mobilize the crowds and mobilize Antifa and get the riot started. I think that's the game changer, is they were able to get it onto the streets.
Well,
that made all the difference.
Yeah. I mean, can I just say something? I mean, going onto the streets is a sign of political failure. If you have to try and bring out people on the streets, it means that you are actually losing rather than winning, always provided, the man in the White House holds his nerve. And that's I think the point to make here.
But Alex, but what they want, I agree. These people are weak. That's what, and they're doing desperate things. This really desperate.
Desperate.
But the thing is that they don't even, in my opinion, as we sit now on the 5th of June, is that they don't want an election. They don't want to have Trump tested again with the electorate, because they're worried about that. They haven't figured out the mail-in thing yet. Okay, I mean, this is because what they want is that he's not the legitimate president. He has never been the legitimate president. Okay, and they don't, and because they deem him as illegitimate, they are now, again, in a pre-revolutionary moment, what I think is appropriate, they're delegitimizing the rule of law. And this has the law of unintended consequences written all over it, okay? Because it's not Trump that's suspending laws. It's the political elite that is suspending belief in the rule of law and creating these ridiculous narratives, systemic racism, out of control cops. Some cops are out of control, yes, that's clear. Okay, but these are supposed to be all-encompassing myths that will drive people to commit these commit acts of crime. Which, of course, there's psychopathic criminals out there that are just reveling in this. I mean, have you seen the video? I mean, in New York City, I mean, they would have vans and they would just go for. I mean, it was really well planned and controlled and executed. They just, all in a van, they have a driver, they go to the next store, they break things, they loot it, they put it in the van, they go to the next one. I mean, were they saying this telephone and this television is for George Floyd? I doubt it, okay? And then you have this lack of commitment to the rule of law, where the police in many cases across the country just walked away from their responsibility. They left the weakest and the most vulnerable in front of these psychopaths and these white liberals with their white guilt. Okay, for me, this ideology. This is an ideology that is short-circuiting, because what does it mean for them to win? The country will be destroyed, but you won. What kind of people think like that?
Well, can I just say, I mean, if we have a situation where the presidential election in November does not happen, or happens in circumstances which are no longer believed in, because people do get a sense of these things, despite what the media says, they will start to come increasingly to doubt what the media says. We will move at that point from a pre-revolutionary situation. We will then have a revolutionary situation in America, because
Alex,
at that point, the Constitution will no longer be functioning.
Alex,
now, how does that benefit the people who are behind all of this? Maybe, I mean, they're deluded enough to think that, and I suspect a lot of them are, but I think they need to take a step back and think about the implications of what they're doing.
But if this is what's really so disheartening, Alex, because is that the people that are pushing this, this is a calculation on their part where they believe, and maybe quite rightly, I don't know, they believe that they could do this without damaging their own interests. Look at the stock market right now. Okay, and if you're in a gated get rid of the police. Fine, because I live in a gated community with cameras and security. I'm perfectly fine. Oh, and by the way, I take a helicopter to work, and there's an Uber driver that brings me lunch, breakfast, and dinner. And I have a nanny that drives my kids to a private school in an armored car. You know, I mean, these people, this is how they think, is that on all these social issues, it has no impact on them. They just virtue signal, okay, because it has no material meaning to their life. It just feels so good inside, but it has no impact on their lives. And this tells me they have written off half the country because they don't need that half of the country. Look, Amazon. Look, my goodness. Now we have. I was originally to say, what have we had in this year alone? Okay, we've had this pandemic, we've had a lockdown, we've had these riots here, and when the dust begins to settle, hopefully soon, it'll be the death of retail. Who's going to want to rent a building with glass? Okay, who's going to want to do that? Oh, just call Amazon. You know what? That's why I'm convinced they don't need half the country, and they don't care if it's destroyed.
Well, they may,
It doesn't destroy. It doesn't impact their political power and the interest that they serve.
Well, in that case, what I would say is that they do begin to sound a little bit like the French aristocrats and the Russian aristocrats. Most of whom, by the way, were busy, as I said, engaging in tremendous factional infighting and intrigues against the king, and had lost touch with the reality of the country outside because they were insulated inside their palaces and had no real contact with the world and life of the nation that they were supposed to be leading. But as I said, I think that I don't think we're quite at that point yet. I think that it does depend very much now on what the US government does and what Donald Trump does. As I said, I think that if he holds his nerve and sees this thing through and calibrates his message and starts using some of the levers of the presidency more effectively and says, look, I'm not proposing anything unconstitutional. I'm not out to impose martial law across the United States. I'm not responsible for what happened in Minnesota. How can I be? I'm not in charge there. I'm not responsible for race relations in the United States. But look, who is trying to?
Who's in charge?
Yeah,
I mean, his own defense secretary is getting cold feet. You have a fifth column in the White House called Jared Kushner. I mean, really? I mean, even if the president, see, this is why it's dangerous, Alex. Even if the president makes a decision, what if it's not executed? That's a crisis of leadership, crisis of power.
Well,
and that's what they want.
Okay. Well, if you have that situation, as I said, if the president makes a constitutional and legal order, and that constitutional legal order is disobeyed by the police and military and civil service of the United States, then again, the Constitution of the United States has collapsed. And at that point, we are in a we are in a revolutionary situation.
That's the point, is to collapse the Constitution, though, Alexander. That is the point.
Yeah, but
that's why you have people on the streets, is to collapse the Constitution.
But at that point, well, this is the point I'm trying to make. At that point, it is not Donald Trump who is going to be in jeopardy, just Donald Trump who's going to be in jeopardy. It is going to be all those people in the gated communities, all those people who are flying around in their helicopters, all those people who are involved in the stock market and all of those things.
Because illegal behavior violence and looting has been legitimized. Once you legitimize it, once you stop, once you refuse to confront it, it will come to the gated communities.
Of course
it won't stop.
Because it is the infrastructure of law and the Constitution and the legal exercise of authority, which makes gated communities, people flying to their offices in helicopters, people doing things in the stock market. That's what makes it possible. If that doesn't exist, then it is no more viable than the palaces of the Romanovs and of the aristocrats were in 1789 France or 1917 Russia. But are we really there? Is that really where we are?
I want to agree with you, if you let me agree with you.
Saturday, you're going to have a big turnout Saturday in DC. I believe it's going to top 1 million people. I think the game changer, RLP, I think the game changer in all these coup attempts and all these regime change against Trump, all these efforts, the game changer was getting people out on the streets. I think that was the game changer. And it seems to me, I hope I'm wrong, it seems to me that the people on the streets are not letting up. They're not going to stop protesting and descending on the streets. I hope they get tired, and I hope they do stop the violence. The protest, if it's a peaceful protest, fine. But I hope eventually it calms down. But I don't see it happening. And I'll just say another thing, what Peter was saying. I think the Democrats and the powers that be have resigned themselves to the fact that they can't win in November, especially with the buffoon candidate that they have in Biden. I think they know it. I think they know Biden can't win. I think they're starting to say, even if we throw a Hillary Clinton, she's not going to win. I think they've resigned themselves to the fact that they can't win at the ballot box. They just can't do it. And so now it's regime change, full force.
What they want to do is they want to so completely delegitimize Trump that a Hillary or a Joe Biden will be coronated. It won't be. It won't be an election in a conventional sense. Okay, it'll be a coronation of an alter. Nothing will fundamentally change things. But that whole approach, and I want to agree with what Alexander Mercouris was saying before, is that all of these intrigues, if we look at the French Revolution, we look at the Russian Revolution, or the Bolshevik coup, as I call it here, you had elites in power that were squabbling and intriguing and all of this, and they could not control the outcome because the outcome ultimately was at their expense, okay? And restoration took a long time in France. It never happened in Russia, okay? So they're playing with fire here because you can't control all these events.
Absolutely.
I don't know how well planned all this stuff is, but we do know the sophistication of social media right now. Okay, and once the rioting and the violence, not the protests, I have no problem with protests, but when the violence starts, the looting starts, the police stand down, when that precinct burned in Minneapolis, that was the signal. We can get away with this. And what it does is that its intention is to delegitimize authority, where authority becomes frozen, stasis, where they don't know how to move. Now, and there's another layer of this also, is that the looting. I mean, you have a distressed middle class and lower classes, and amazingly distressed right now. And I don't think the mainstream media covers it with clarity whatsoever. People are very desperate, they're very angry, and there's unfortunately that element of society that they're just professional criminals, okay? And other people say, well, I mean, it's just looting. I mean, because it's been normalized by the media, it's been normalized by white liberals, it's just things, okay? That's that slippery slope. Okay, I mean, it's just looting. Oh, we just killed the shop owner, a black woman that she put her life work into it, but it's only looting. You see what this Orwellian language they're using against us? You have the law and you have to interpret it the best way you possibly can and enforce it. When the state no longer will enforce its laws, you're on a slippery slope. And that's always a slippery slope to disaster.
Yes,
we could actually use Weimar, Germany as another historical example. Maybe Alexander Maciris would feel more comfortable with that.
I don't know. I'm not uncomfortable with any of that. This is a very interesting discussion. What I'm saying is I do tend to think that the agenda at the moment is still to try and engineer a democratic coronation at the November election, just as you said. I'm not sure this is the right way, actually. I think that what tends to happen in this kind of situation, yes, I think what's much more likely to happen is that there will be a rally round the figure of authority, who is the president of the United States, who is Donald Trump. Now, if they are prepared to go a step further and actually, as I said, start using violence, targeting violence directly at the institutions of the state, because that's what a revolution ultimately is, then, as I said, I think that the forces of the United States are still sufficiently strong to contain that, provided Trump keeps his nerve, which I suspect in that kind of scenario, he would. If they succeed, if they engineer a rigged election in November, or cancel the election entirely, or if they carry out another ridiculous impeachment between now and November, which everybody throughout the United States would see as a transparent device to stop Trump winning in November, then, as I said, we are looking at a potentially revolutionary situation.
But isn't it
at that point, the Constitution no longer works?
But isn't it fascinating, Alex? Is that the country is pretty evenly split? Okay, let's not forget that. Okay. But what I find truly frightening is that you have half the country and you have all of the institutions that we keep mentioning, particularly the media. They are, with eyes wide open, they understand that this is crushing the Republic and the Constitution, and they're for it, okay? And once you do that, and it's you inherit the levers of power, what are they going to be worth?
Well, they're not going to be. I mean, they're not going to work.
It's going to be It's going to be the new utopian society. That's what it's going to be. Kneel to the new utopian society.
Yeah,
kneel.
yes.
That's their order to everybody. Kneel to it. Get on your knees and kiss the ring of the new utopia. We all know what that new utopia is. No religion, no culture, no history. Diversity, equality, consumerism, social media, Apple, Google, YouTube, Twitter. These are our new gods. Kneel. Everybody kneel to it. That's the agenda.
Yes. You see, if you break the levers of power, if you have a situation, as I said, where the Constitution no longer functions and the legal system no longer functions, whatever your objective is, you will fail, because you cannot operate. You cannot operate in that kind of situation without continuous coercion. And continuous coercion in a society like the United States, where people have a very ingrained loyalty to their constitution, I think would encounter very rapid resistance. This is my own personal view. I think that the people, if there is a revolutionary agenda in the United States, the people who are promoting it need to take a step back, think very carefully about what they're doing, and ask themselves, is this really worth it just to get rid of Donald Trump? Because frankly, I think that they're playing an incredibly reckless game if that's what they're doing.
Alex, then I agree with you, but then one would have thought, this Russia thing.
Well, I know.
This thing. Oh, we'll try Ukraine emoluments, all of this stuff, and they're just trying it again. I mean, that is the definition of stupidity, thinking that you're going to get a different outcome by doing the same thing. Yes. Okay, and but again, I want to keep reiterating, the damage it wrought is irreparable, because you're going to destroy the fabric of society.
Yes,
and when I look at these young people, I mean, so many of them have been so amazingly indoctrinated. I think maybe they actually believe what they're doing, okay? But do they realize that the future that they want for themselves, they're destroying it with their own hands and bricks?
Yes.
Okay? It is so self-destructive, these things. Yes. That's why I am always against revolutions, because you never can control the outcome, all right?
When you walk in the streets of Moscow, you see the the statues of, say, you know, Lenin, and they haven't really torn those down. I think it's right. You see the history there. And I look at what's happening in the US, and I just say, you know, it's teetering to the point, and I'm not saying we're there yet, but it's teetering to the point where these people want to tear the entire system down. They want the new rule of law to be wokeness and identity politics and all that garbage that they've been throwing down our throat for the past 10 years. And they've ramped it up the last 3 years. And you're one step away from walking down the streets in DC and not seeing any churches, because those are going to be burned down, not seeing any of the monuments in DC, which is a beautiful city, not seeing those monuments anymore, and seeing the statues of Obama and Beyonce and all these people lighting the streets of the United States.
Well,
and I say that jokingly, obviously, but you know, we've seen this over and over. People may laugh, but you know, these types of regime changes, Alexander, do elevate people and things to godlike statuses. You see it in North Korea today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You saw it in communist Russia. These things, you're not far off. That's my point, is you're not far off. But I agree, we're not there today, but it's teetering very close.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
getting to that point.
One of the constant things that I have been saying for years, as we've discussed Russiagate, is that Russiagate is an enormous attack, was an enormous attack. Not so much, obviously, on Donald Trump, but primarily on the constitutional system of the United States. The United States has a democratic political tradition, which I have great respect for. It has a Republican tradition, it has a constitutional tradition. It seems to me that the danger to the United States has been consistently coming from those who want to destroy those things, because I still think those things, those constitutional, democratic, Republican traditions and institutions are the only way a country like the United States can function. I mean, what is the United States if you take away its constitution? I mean, Russia has a history, a long history, under various governments. You could change the government, you could change the constitutional system there, and there was still a country called Russia. But the United States has been created around its constitution,
exactly,
democracy, and its system of government. Destroy those things, and what do you have?
They want to do. Their opening salvo is to destroy the culture. Okay, that's how they want to. And we've seen this consistently for years now. In the name of wokeism, we have to severely amend, if not get rid of, freedom of speech, because speech is. I mean, you have to understand what's going on right now. At least in Anglo-Saxon culture, we have a tradition of what you shouldn't say. There's certain things you shouldn't say in public. And there are certain slurs about people that, and I agree with that. I don't think you need to use racial slurs. I think it's demeaning, and it gets you nowhere in a conversation. But we've crossed the Rubicon. Now it's what you must say. See, that we've never had that in our civilizational history, is that now you must say things, okay? Before free speech is protected. It's not that it's illegal for you to say racial slurs, because society will pile on you, okay? You don't need the law to pile on you, okay? But now it's, if you don't say what you're supposed to say, the law will go after you. See, this is this paradigm shift that's going on, and it's totally Orwellian, okay? Because it changes the meaning of how we perceive reality. And that reality that they want us to perceive is ideologically constructed.
Yes.
I mean, if you say the wrong thing, and we'll get to the super chats and we'll wrap it up here. I want your thoughts, guys. If you say the wrong thing now, who even cares about the law? You'll get deplatformed. You'll lose your job. You'll have the social media mob after you. Sometimes you'll even have the real life mob coming after you. So I mean, the law now is almost secondary. If you say or do the wrong thing, or don't kneel to the master of woke, to the master and the god of woke, then your life could be disappeared that. Boom, you're gone.
Well, this is another important point, because of course, over and beyond
the things we've been saying about what we are in effect seeing is a entirely distinct system of authoritarian control, which is what you're talking about, deplatforming, censorship, all that kind of thing, which is antithetical to law. It is contrary to law. It is not created through law. It is insinuated into the political system from outside by powerful players who are no longer being controlled properly. And that, again, is a very dangerous situation. I do want to say this again. I am not trying to say that, the United States is not in a very difficult situation. Clearly, there is a major attack on the political and legal and constitutional system. That's been clear to me now for 3 years, right through Russiagate, right through Ukrainegate. There is an economic crisis, but I still believe that the United States is able to overcome economic crises, provided it hews to its system of government. I believe it's done it before, it can do it again. And of course, there are all kinds of other problems. But I don't think we are anywhere close yet to the point of no return. We might be if things go horribly wrong in November. Yeah, and that's entirely possible. I mean, I'm not saying it's not.
You just said, given that we get out of this economic crisis, because it's been done before. Yeah. Well, I think that's a big question mark right now. I think that's a really big question mark because, first of all, we mythologize systemic racism, and we don't deal with class inequalities. Okay, I mean, and they're persistent about that. And what in economic, see, what they want us is to talk ideology all the time. I think it's all nonsense, personally. Okay, it's this gobbledygook. I look at the interest of working people and families. Okay, and I don't see the way the economy is functioning. We're getting estimates right now that 40% of small businesses will not make it through this. That is devastating. That is absolutely devastating, because the way the Constitution, I mean, if you look at the founders, I mean, read the Federalist Papers, I mean, they talk a lot about the propertied elite. I mean, you have to remember when the Republic started, the franchise was very small. It wasn't just white guys that could vote. Not all people could vote. No. You had to have property. Okay, you had to have a stake in the society, and the evolution of the republic has been based on people that have a vested interest, a stakeholder in the constitutional order. Okay, I mean, a really good example. I mean, Barack Obama, the Messiah president. Yeah. You know what? Under Obama, Black Americans were the biggest losers in his quote unquote recovery. Black ownership of homes went down drastically. Black ownership of businesses went down drastically. And they're blaming the Republicans for that. He had all houses of Congress at that time. Yes. Okay. What has the Democrats and the liberals done for minority and working people? Jack squat. Okay. Amazing how they can turn things around. It's just a prism. They just keep moving and dangling until it gets right into focus for what they want. And of course, it's a prism that distorts. Prisms, by definition, distort.
Yeah, the power of media and the power of social media technology, and that's owned by the Democrats.
Yes, as I said, I'm not discounting the points that. I want to make this very clear. I mean, I'm not oblivious to the problems in the United States. And of course, here on the Duran, we've suffered from a lot of this kind of attack, which I consider, by the way, unconstitutional, the deplatforming, all of that. So I'm not oblivious to it. All I am saying is, I think that if people are bringing out people onto the streets in this way and rioting, it is more likely, if Donald Trump keeps his nerve, to strengthen him than weaken him in the run-up to the election in November. That is what I think happened. That was what happened in the 1960s, which led to the election of Nixon. And I think it is what will happen this time. with Donald Trump, despite the economic problems, despite the issues of the pandemic, despite all the endless harassment that is happening. If I am wrong, and we actually see a concerted attempt to overthrow him between now and November, and an attempt, if that fails, to prevent that election from taking place in a lawful and orderly way, then I agree, we are in a revolutionary situation in the United States.
You know, it's really sad before we get to the super chats. What I found so saddening and pathetic is that the problems of the country are very obvious if you have sober eyes, okay? And it's the political elites, including the Republicans. Remember, I don't let the Republicans off the hook ever on this podcast, okay? But the problems are really evident, okay? Particularly the economic ones. And Congress just goes on vacation. Okay, so, you know, they'll come back if there's an emergency. Well, in a few hours' time, we're going to find that there are 30 million emergencies, people losing their job, okay? But they can't be bothered because they paid off all of their interest. They're the ones that got the concierge treatment, all their big business friends, all their special interests, they've been paid off. They're sitting pretty. They're sitting pretty, okay? They're having wine in the shower, okay? As the country burns and desperation grips tens of millions of people because of this economic situation, this whole rioting spree is just so convenient for the people in power because they're just going to gobble up all those distressed institutions and businesses. I don't have the number on top of my head. It's like the richest of their over the last few weeks, their portfolios have grown in billions and billions of dollars. Okay, yeah, they can afford to have wine in the shower as the country is in desperation and burning, and the elites cannot be bothered.
All right, let's get to the super chats, guys. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Valius, $20 super chat. Thank you, Valius.
Oh,
As
wow.
always,
Okay.
we really appreciate it. From Atnosens, 25 RON super chat. Are the globalists in danger to lose US, their main host, or is this an escalation towards new heights, a consolidation for a planetary power grab, a planetary power grab?
Well, in a sense, both. I think that one of the things that's been happening in the United States over the last 3 years is you see a growing desperation, not 3 years, 4 years, ever since Donald Trump emerged on the political scene in 2015, is growing desperation on the elites, on the part of the elites, as they see his rise, not just because of who he is, though we should not underestimate his political importance and his political skills, but because of what he's come to represent for so many people, not just in the United States, but internationally. So they become increasingly desperate about it. And at the same time, they also have the objective, as we know, of completing this globalization project, which seems to be slipping out of their fingers. So it's both at the same time. And that's why, as I said, we've been seeing these attacks, and others have said on this program, we've been seeing these attacks on the legal and constitutional system of the United States, which, just to reiterate, the United States is not only built around, but which are the symbol of its sovereignty.
All right. All said. Okay.
Globalization, remember, means different things to different people.
I know.
Okay?
Yeah.
For Western elites, it's basically everyone has to take a knee to their economic benefit. The Chinese believe in globalism too, but they believe in developing and defending their economy. See, Western elites abandoned that. They went to financialize the economy. Others that don't want to follow the path of Western globalization will balk at it. And that's why we have this growing confrontation with China, which is ridiculous. It only will end badly. And it will most likely end badly for the West.
Okay, from, let's see, Diane Falk is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, Diane. And Mia is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, Mia. From Sparky, $5 super chat, a big if, but if election fraud is mitigated enough, as long as issues are in favorable directions, Trump's in good shape. evil commenced too early?
That's my view. That's also my own analysis. I'm going to say it. I think he will come through this stronger rather than weaker. That's not to say, obviously, that there are not many people who are trying to pull him down. And it's also not to say that, you know, there are causes for concern. We mustn't, though, just look at Donald Trump. There is the underlying problem of what is happening to the United States and the fact that the country is becoming so divided. And as I said, we have a situation of stasis emerging, which may continue after November, even if he's re-elected.
All right, from Sparky at $5 super chat. Yep.
It's not Trump isn't the problem. Okay, for liberals and self-hating whites or whatever you want to call them. I mean, he's just a symbol of all of it, and that's why they detest him so much. It's not that he really changed much at all. Okay, I mean, he is their opportunity for this, because these people are always impatient. Okay, impatient to enforce their ideology on others, and Trump is the perfect mark. All right, it's the perfect mark for it, and they know because of the quote unquote resistance that, you know, his team may not be unified around him. And we've seen this over and over and over again. An HR problem. We've said this from the first podcast we ever made. Okay, so, I mean, it's not really, Trump, it just personifies their impatience to remake the world, remake the country and destroy traditional culture.
From Sparky, a $5 super chat. A problem in the U.S. is local police are controlled by deep state via federal grants and subsidies. It's how even small towns afford shiny new cars, etc.
There is so much about the United States, which, as I say, one has to find out and know about. And thank you for that comment. I should say this: I don't have the granular knowledge of the United States, what goes on in particular cities, in particular how policing works in the United States, that I do say in Britain. I mean, I've never lived there, for example. I've visited the country, but I don't have that sense of knowledge. So every comment like that I find really useful.
Well, I don't think it really makes a whole lot of sense, because you have police departments reacting in different ways. So these police departments are not reading from the same script. So, I mean, the deep state running it. What bothers me very much is the militarization of the police. I think that it really is gone in the wrong direction. Okay, look, okay, what do the police do? They do basically two things, and they do it in the service of their liberal masters for the most part. Okay, is to protect the wealth of the rich and to keep the underclass under control. That's bad policing. Okay, and I'm not saying that's uniform and everywhere. As a matter of fact, there's tons of research and data. People want more police in their community, not less. This is another BS myth that the mainstream is pushing on. Get rid of the police. Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? This is ludicrous. Poor communities all across the country, almost without exception, want more policing. They feel more safe with police around, not less. It's stupid.
But doesn't that bring us back to the point, Peter, that if people who, and by the way, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can say that without any equivocation. The people who are most exposed to crime, who need the police most, are the poor. Well, not just the poor, but people who are, who are not the super wealthy in their gated communities. They're going to hear people say, "Do away with the police," and they're going to look at Donald Trump, and he is supporting the police. Who are they going to vote for come November?
I just want to make a qualification, and it just popped in my head. Nixon in '68 was not an incumbent, and this is what makes the situation with Trump different, because he is an incumbent.
No, that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true.
He, as I've said over and over again, he owns it. He's the president.
I know. That's why he needs to, as I said, appear presidential. Own it, yeah.
All right, from Sparky, $5 super chat. Deep states using a Charles Manson helter-skelter technique. They try to start a race war. There are many agent provocateurs and useful idiots.
That's what
there are many agents provocateurs, and there are many useful idiots. That is completely true. There are underlying structural problems, but there are also those people that Sparky has just talked about here. And as I said, there is an element of orchestration about this, of that I am sure.
From CDN 89, leftists remove history. My Virginia governor is a joke. Yeah, Virginia was red, went blue.
Yeah.
So, and it's not going to be
Well,
turning back.
I mean, on the issue of monuments and statutes, I believe it should be the communities that decide what they want in their cities. Okay, and this attempt to erase history is very, very dangerous. But if a community comes together and finds consensus that they want to remove or put somewhere else, I think that they have that prerogative here. Okay, so I think it's really sad that people want to destroy the memory, historical memory. We so desperately need it. I mean, we talk about history all the time on these podcasts because history matters a lot.
From Toilet Sauce, super chat, 10 euros. Did you see the embarrassingly exaggerated spectacle from the mayor of Minneapolis at George Floyd's funeral? I found Otto Warmbier's confession in North Korea more convincing.
Oh yeah, those are all hostage tapes. Oh yeah, those are hostage tapes. Yeah.
From Sparky, a $5 super chat. Older generals and elected officials are vulnerable to MSM propaganda because in their case, alternative media is precisely that, alternative.
There is some truth in this, but I mean, certainly someone like Mattis should know better than he's saying.
He should know better.
He's thinking about his legacy. That's what he's thinking about. Mattis. That's why he's turned. From Meganesia Shan, Trump is a fiddler on the roof.
Well, I don't know.
But the fiddle on the roof is actually a positive character.
Yeah.
Not a negative.
Well, that's certainly true. I mean, you could. I mean, Nero is, I suppose, the other person one thinks about with fiddling, but that doesn't come. That's not how he comes across to me at all. I don't think Trump is like that. I think he's very concerned. I think he's trying to sort of get a grip on the situation. He's never been someone, I think, who's worked very well within the administrative structures of the US because he's never really understood them. At least not in the way that he should do, and of course he doesn't have that ability that some presidents like Lincoln and Roosevelt have had of finding people in all across the United States who they're able to leverage into positions who will act for them loyally and constructively. He's never understood political patronage, which in a country as complicated as the United States, I'm sorry if that sounds cynical, but you have to have that kind of knowledge.
Yeah, it's too bad we can't, resurrect LBJ. He'd be a great vice president for Trump because he'd just tell him how the system works. Okay? Because he just doesn't have a Harry Hopkins or somebody like that.
No, exactly.
And it's Trump's own damn fault because he relies upon his family and Jared Kushner, which in my mind is an obvious fifth column inside the White House. Okay. I mean, I really wish I could understand that dynamic, okay, because it's so bizarre to me.
Yes.
Brando Commando, U.S. added 2.5 million jobs in May. Unemployment fell to 13.3%.
Yes,
I mean, I take a rather more optimistic view of the economic future than some others do. But let me stress again, if you have a chaotic election in November or a cancelled election in November, then any expectations of any kind of recovery in the United States can, just disappear, because at that point, where there is no constitutional or legal order, an economy cannot function. It's as simple as that.
Adding jobs in May. Okay, what kind of jobs were they? Yeah. Okay, was it gig work? Most of it was, obviously, and we have new unemployment coming out. The viewer that made that comment is right, but only half right. Okay, you just can't say adding jobs. Which jobs did you lose? Which one's going to be lost for good? We're still in the middle of all of this here. But the kind of job how many people did Amazon hire? Okay, all right, I'm glad for those people. Okay, I mean, here's a woke company that treats its employees like serfs. Okay, what kind of health benefits do they have? Okay, what kind of PPE are they given? Okay, so look at the source of where jobs are being generated before anyone starts clapping. Okay, we don't know yet. We're still in the middle of it.
From Sparky, fun fact: if it's an insurrection, then many conspirators who might be charged with sedition could then have their charges upgraded to treason.
Well, I mean, that's where we start entering. Well, when we get there, exactly. I mean, I come back to this. I think that ultimately, the Constitution and the constitutional system of the United States is still working sufficiently strongly to withstand the attack that it's facing. For me, the real crisis will come after November, but we shall see what happens in November, because November is very difficult, and we have a lot of problems getting there, and we'll see what a lot of things happening between now and then.
From Brent,
look at the General Flynn. The court that he has to face. You have a judge that wants to act like a prosecutor.
Well, I know.
I mean, and I'm not, I don't want to overstress this here, but the sense of separation of powers, of the rule of law, Alex, it's eroding away. It's eroding away. Why we have these activist judges? I mean, when the prosecution stepped down, he should have said, "Okay, we're adjourned. Go home." I mean, because that's exactly what he should do. And all of a sudden, oh no, I'm going to interpret separation of powers now. I've never heard of that, Alex. And the fact that it's happening now is, in my mind, no coincidence.
No, of course it's not. I mean, it's an extreme example of the attack on the constitutional system. Sullivan, who is the judge, is not acting like any kind of judge, not even like an activist judge. He has stepped outside the structure of what a judge should be. I mean, it's quite, as I say, it's bizarre. He's even now instructed his own attorney, which I've never heard before. But absolutely, it's no coincidence that these sort of things are all happening at the same time. But as I said, all I'm saying is I still think there's enough time to turn things around and enough political space to do it. And I'm not quite sure how concerted the people are. But as I said, it's certainly a deteriorating situation in the United States. It just has been for some time now.
Yeah, I'm not as optimistic. I'm afraid, because this is a blood sport. One will win, one will lose, and that is something new. Okay, I was this little boy. I was watching the Watergate hearings. Okay, and Nixon was a hated politician, and he was very divisive. But the process of having him removed from office was done with decorum. Okay, with the country's interests at stake here. I don't see the majority of the actors now involved in what's going on. They're not people of goodwill. They're not. Okay, and I'm very pessimistic. I tend to think that we've used the historical analogy of the Bolshevik Revolution. No two revolutions are the same. Let's be very clear about that. But when you have state institutions being compromised, or it's members of those institutions neglecting their obligations, that is a very, very bad place to be. And plus a pandemic, economic turndown, it all rolls up into one. In my lifetime, we've never seen anything like this unfold so quickly. Who would have thought 2020 was going to be like this? My goodness. And we're just halfway through.
Well, I know.
Alex, where's that Duran popcorn?
Michael Hardy, 199 super chat. Moscow has come alive. Well done.
Oh yes. Well, Peter's there.
Yeah, well, it's not too alive. It's actually drizzle today.
From Brando Commando, $20 super chat. Second Amendment debate is over. Record gun sales. If this is anything like Nixon's election, New York and LA had the first Republican governors in decades, and Nixon won by a huge landslide. We have to remember that Biden.
Not in 60.
We have to remember that Biden is still a very weak opponent.
I agree. I mean, this is, as I said, this is my overall feeling.
But anyway, we'll see what happens. But I don't think there will be a coronation, a Democratic Party coronation in November. I think Trump will be re-elected in November. And I think these events that are happening now are going to help him. That's my analysis of this. I may be wrong.
Okay, from Sparky, a $5 super chat. Police go after those whom they perceive of as poor because courts don't want dockets clogged with wealthy defendants with jury trials, etc.
Well, I mean, this is another issue, which is, of course, that the United States' criminal justice system has been collapsing for a very long time with all this extraordinary system of people plea bargaining and being bled dry and all that. I mean, but that's a big discussion for another day.
We have to be, I mean, if it was Joe Biden. I mean, he was at the center of the crime bill in the 90s. Okay, it was Joe Biden. And what has happened in America is you've criminalized poverty. You've criminalized poor people. All right, and that's the wrong trajectory here. Okay, and it angers me a lot. I mean, the number of people that are caught in catch-22s and things like that. And as Alec just said, these people don't have resources. Are you going to get a public defender? Well, if you're lucky, you'll get a good one. But most of it's just going to plead it out, okay? That's not justice in my mind, okay? I mean, the criminalizing of poor people is one reason why we are where we are today.
Well, indeed, if a man like General Flynn, Michael Flynn, National Security Advisor of the President of the United States, a highly decorated military officer, cannot afford his legal bills and cannot find a proper law firm to defend him, then the situation is very, very seriously wrong. What chance do poor people, or even not poor people, middle class people have in that kind of situation? But this is a huge subject, and we need to talk about it perhaps in more detail in another place. It doesn't detract from the importance of restoring order in the US cities now.
From Darren Levy, can Trump order an arrest warrant on Soros?
I don't know that he can order an arrest warrant. I think the Justice Department does that.
Yeah.
That's the division of powers in the United States. And of course, people need, before you can arrest somebody, you need to know about, you need to have evidence of a crime before you do so. You need to have a case. And remember, the gentleman you just mentioned is going to have all the best lawyers in America to defend him. So you need to have a strong case.
From Sparky, $2 super chat. Wear your masks and kneel, peasants.
It was such a disgusting video. 2 videos I saw. It was so.
They're all over the place. Even Sweden. I don't know if you guys saw the latest one from Sweden, where there's a Swedish police officer and her car is getting vandalized, and then she gets out and kneels, and then she cries and.
Oh my goodness! No, I haven't. I haven't.
God, Sweden, what happened to you? What happened to you, Sweden? All right, from a CDN, $5 super chat. Before CV19, 90% of Virginia was going to flip into West Virginia over gun laws.
Saw that.
We see them, and we're on the edge of Northern Power grabbing Debs. Coup failed. Now they revolt.
No, it's really interesting because you have to remember West Virginia became a state because of the Civil War, because that part of Virginia had northern leanings, and so it became a state because the state is so divided. And now that division has come to Virginia proper. And I saw those news reports. Fascinating how people want to secede from Virginia and join West Virginia. Really interesting.
From Winter Wind 89, U.S. job numbers, 13% unemployment, 2.5 million jobs added to the economy in May.
We're going to get the new numbers in a few hours, okay?
Yes.
From Sparky, $5 super chat. In the last 40 years, the white nationalist movement and non-government organized racism in the U.S., an imaginary creation of the media and the intel community.
There are white nationalists. There are people that identify in one form or another with fascists. They're so marginal. And then Susan Rice, it's the Russians did it. Okay, I mean, these tiresome tropes out there that these white nationalists are calling the shot. They are so marginal in the United States. Okay. And it's just another boogeyman. And of course they support Trump. There's no evidence of that, not one shred of evidence of it. So it's white nationalists, and then it's these racists that are calling the shots. It's just absolutely absurd. Okay. And if you do believe that, I have some condominiums on Mars I'd like to sell you.
The media and the elites had no problem supporting real white nationalists, real fascists, people that were supporting Bandera during the Ukraine coup.
Absolutely correct.
They had no problem supporting them. Zero problem supporting them. No. And those are the real deal. Those guys are the real deal.
Yes.
And they had no problem with them. So
no, on the contrary.
Those real deal guys, they went to Hong Kong to pay their respects to the colored revolution that's being played out in Hong Kong. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, not only that, but as I said, those people in Ukraine, who are fascists, Nazis, and racists, white supremacists, and all those things, are heroes in the United States amongst the very people that we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, good super chat, Sparky. Thank you for that. From Sparky, Klobuchar turned the psycho cop loose repeatedly.
I mean, failed to prosecute. Yeah,
failed to prosecute. From Sparky, regardless, not irregardless. So thank you, Sparky, for that. All right. Aussie Insider, $10. $10. We need to get some eyes on Australia. In about 8 hours, the police are going to start killing Black Australians. NSW Supreme Court just authorized police brutality against Australian protesters.
I don't know anything about this. I find that very difficult to believe, by the way. But having said that, obviously things are going on in Australia I don't know about.
Send us a link.
Send us
the insider to what's going on, and we'll cover it. Meganesia Shan, the snake is eating its tail.
Yes. Very good word. Very good point. It's absolutely, it's going to, these problems that we've been talking about are accumulating. As I said, even if we're not in a revolutionary situation now, which I think we're not, but we have that potential to be in after November, and we could be later, because I don't really see how this political system is now adjusting anymore. We have very entrenched lines, and that is very bad. And it is the snake eating its tail.
What's really interesting, because there's so many different scenarios that we could talk about in November, but really, don't you think January of next year is the real thing? Because if Trump is reelected, and I think his chances are diminished as we speak now, diminished. But if he does, okay, first of all, the country will blow up, because there won't be an agreement that it was a legitimate presidential election. Unfortunately, that's where we stand, folks. Okay, and there'll be the next one will be not making sure that he's not inaugurated for a second term. Okay, that's something that popped in my head, and we have to keep an eye on. What's going to happen in November? Wow, it's only June. It's June 5th. We got a long way to go.
Yeah.
All right. From Sparky, $2 super chat. Clinton's militarized cops, CV militarized Karens. Very well said.
No, that woman in Central Park, that is such a typical suburban white liberal woman. Okay, she used the language of political correctness and tried to turn, and while at the same time hypocritically accusing someone that wasn't doing anything to her at all. I mean, that's a clip of pure hypocrisy. She used the woke language. There's an African American man threatening me, which of course he wasn't. Okay, so I mean, it just shows again the snake is eating its own tail. Okay, that's a perfect example of how it's all short-circuited.
From Sparky, I hope the violence is replaced by gilet jaune.
Well.
Interesting parallel.
Very interesting. I mean, yellow vest protests, of course, are those, and I have multiple witnesses about this, were predominantly peaceful
overwhelmingly peaceful. It's the police who were propelling the violence at them, and they were doing so with the support of the president, who is of course supported by the very neoliberal type of people that we are talking about, who are taking the opposite line in the United States. These are not Democrats, but highly authoritarian when they have the opportunity to be.
Because they know better. They know better. They're morally superior.
As we see in the way they try to police social media.
From Sparky, $5 super chat. Just like the 6,000 word looting of the US bill was ready and waiting for an excuse, the helter-skelter type plan was ready and waiting for an excuse.
We will maybe find out one day.
We will find out.
Yeah. From CDN 89, $2 super chat. Alex, did you see rioters burning home people's stuff? We all saw the videos.
Absolutely, of course.
We all saw the videos. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, can I just say, I mean, you know, I've actually witnessed riots, and they're a very frightening thing. They're terrifying, actually, if you are anywhere near to one. So, I mean, you know, this is violence on a very, very real scale.
From Meganesia Shan, kneel to the sun. ZAR 100 super chat. Thank you, Meganesia Shan. Kneel to the sun. Hazel Hogan, $9.99 super chat. Thank you as always, guys. Brilliant analysis. Thank you very much for that super chat, Hazel. Yinka is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, Yinka, to the Duran community. From Sparky, roided out thug cops were years in the making to protect elites. Justice system needs redoing with strict adherence to Constitution from top to bottom.
Completely agree. Entirely agree. I mean, there's a huge job to be done there, and I mean, we've seen how terrible the system was during Russiagate. I mean, how its agencies were completely corrupted.
From Raul Pinto,
who's going to want to become a police officer now? Okay, who? You know, demonizing every person in uniform is just absurd. It's simply absurd. Okay, and a lot of those people in uniform are people of color. All right, these liberals, I mean, they have their own bodyguards. Of course, we don't need any police. It's so stupid.
Raul Pinto, $5 super chat. This is indeed America's neoliberal October Revolution. You are on the money. Thank you very much for that super chat. Raul from Smiley Big, $5 super chat. Was the lockdown and economic collapse and now riots really about COVID and race relations, or really about re-engineering society?
Well, you could make a case for every single one of those, I suppose.
Yeah.
Society is getting re-engineered. That's
society. Sure. There's been a lot of that going on for a long time.
Yeah, that's for sure. It is getting re-engineered. Thank you for that super chat. Russell Hall, the left destroys those who bend the knees. Each time you kneel before them, hoping to reconcile, brings you closer to a day where they stand behind you with a gun while you kneel.
Part of this ideology is never to forgive, only to submit. Once you submit, then you have no power, and there's no reason to reconcile with someone with no power. That's how these people think.
Do you guys know who Drew Brees is, the NFL quarterback?
No, I'm afraid not.
What happened with him? Okay, well, yeah, he ended up apologizing. He made a comment how, you know, he stands behind the U.S. flag. Nothing, really, the comment was nothing controversial, but he says that he'll never, you know, not go against the U.S. flag.
And look at the stuff that's being thrown.
And he ended up apologizing, Drew Brees. That's a big mistake. They're not, and they're already not happy with his apology. They're already not happy with his apology. So yeah, I agree with that statement. Russell, thank you for that super chat. From Sparky, if morons hadn't sent the sick to spread CV into nursing homes, it would have been just another routine year of pneumonia deaths.
Well, there's been so many mistakes made over the management of this affair that it's difficult to know where to start. And of course, they've happened in many countries. By the way, we had something like that happen here in Britain. 15,000 people were discharged from hospitals, some of them with CV, and they ended up in nursing homes, many of them. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, but you won't find any accountability on CNN because Fredo is interviewing his Gov brother. Okay, yeah. Turned it into some kind of macabre hoax. I mean, that is such a bastardization of anything resembling journalism. I mean, it's so insulting. It's so demeaning. This is a national crisis. People are dying. And they're talking about the nose size of the governor of New York. It's appalling.
Unfortunately, CNN hit #1 in ratings in one of the key demographics. I forgot the key demographic. They were #1. They haven't been #1 in 19 years. I think it's like the afternoon demographic for like the 35 to 50-year-old. And CNN actually topped it the first time in 19 years.
Okay, well,
What does that tell you?
Off as a blip, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, Molly Noonan, $5 super chat. I can attest to the race division succeeding in my own family. It scares me to the core.
Yeah. Well, I've never known America as divided as it is at the moment, or has been for some time now.
Light, thank you, Molly, for that super chat. Life of Brian, $5 super chat. Is Chris Hayes an honest broker?
Chris Hayes.
I guess MSNBC's Chris Hayes.
I think he's quote unquote the intellectual over there. I mean, no, he basically read the interview. I think it was with the Atlantic. You know, he basically essentially said, yeah, the Russiagate was a hoax, but he said, but it was still the Russians' fault. I mean, that's the intellectual at MSNBC. He's a buffoon. That's what he is, a buffoon.
He's controlled. He's controlled, guys.
Well, you got a gig, got a great gig for him.
Exactly, he's controlled.
Indeed. Yes.
So yeah, there's nothing honest about him. He reads a script. From Dan Noyes, $5 super chat. Antifa et al. Denies individual rights, cannot claim to be defenders of minorities. And the smallest minority on earth is the individual.
I mean, Antifa engages in criminal activity, which it represents or misrepresents as direct action. It's not there to protect people. I mean, that's absolutely not what it is.
There to incite people.
They're to incite people. The way you protect people is through the impartial operation of the law within a democratic society. Vigilantism is never the way.
From Dan Noyes, the violence is exposing traitors in our midst.
Well, it's certainly exposing criminals.
Yes, exactly. And the psychopaths that are in power.
Yeah.
From Gloria Pulido, $20 super chat. I appreciate you and the dogs. Thank you, Gloria, for that super chat. You're looking for.
No, they're not here, actually.
Mine are under the desk.
Okay. From Dan Noyes, the general population is watching, but not quite motivated to action yet.
I agree. I think, in fact, what I think is going to happen is I do believe that there is a silent majority in these situations. And as I said, I think they will rally behind the person who will say, I can bring order to the streets. And at the moment, that looks more like Donald Trump.
Well, historically, that's the case. The thing is the timeline. Okay, there has to be the correct timeline for that to work. Okay.
Yes.
So, it's up in the air still.
Yes.
All right. From Momo 199 super chat. Love the Duran, watching from Hong Kong.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our best to everyone in Hong Kong. Thank you, Momo, for that. From Michael, a $10 super chat. No comment. Thank you very much, Michael, for that super chat. From Sparky, $5 super chat. Strange bedfellows, communists and robber barons. Love to see the destruction of the small and new businesses and the middle class, which they support.
Well, I mean, this comes back to the point that we were making before, which is that if there is that kind of revolution in America, if there is a total breakdown of the Constitution and the system of law, the billionaires will not be the beneficiaries because their entire existence ultimately depends upon the operation of a system of law, which, by the way, is a dysfunctional system of law, because in my opinion, the kind of billions that these people have is wrong anyway. But I'm not here to expropriate people or round them up or anything like that. What I want to see is the constitutional system of the United States working properly.
Yeah, I mean, and not just the Constitution is like that you use it like it's your own private law that you can manipulate.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
And I think that the average person sees that. Okay, when you Absolutely. See that there's this transfer of wealth upward. Okay, during a crisis. Okay, it's not because we're having great times.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, the United States, needs to remember that it is supposed to be a republic. A republic is that thing which all the people have in common, a commonwealth. That is what it means. That's what the Latin word means. And at the moment, that is fraying.
From Dan Noyes, a $5 super chat. The general population owns 393 million guns, armed to the teeth, and is loyal to the Constitution.
Well,
that's always the exceptionalism of the United States, is that the population is heavily armed.
From Jim Dock, a $5 super chat. Quote from the Game of Thrones, which perfectly describes the DNC. Quote, they would gladly watch the country burn if they could be in control of the ashes, end quote.
There's a famous quote which you can find from, I think it's Chernyshevsky, who's a Russian writer, who talks about the mentality of revolutionaries, which is that the worse things are, the better.
Very well said. From Mark C., a new member of the Duran community. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining. From Kalonji 777 499 super chat. Globalization is going to happen. We can fight it all we want, but it is going to happen at some point. It is written. We must not forget that.
It depends on what you mean by the word globalization. I mean, we are in a globalized world. The thing is that how it's controlled and to whose benefit. Okay, as I've said many times here, I mean, globalization is interpreted and executed in different ways in different parts of the world. And the United States is probably the exemplar of doing it the worst, okay? Because all it does is transfer enormous wealth to a very small number of people and basically hollows out the country. Not all other countries interpret globalization in the same way.
I mean, I am all in favor of international trade, of countries working together in partnership to sort out problems. I mean, if you go back to the, I think it was the 50s, the countries around the world got together and they carried out a very effective program to get on top of the smallpox. That was done by sovereign states working together. And that's something I fully support. Globalization, to me, means something quite different. It means a single economic system regulated from one place and controlled by one group of people.
And that's not a government.
That's not, well, it's not even a government because it operates beyond government control. And that is a very dangerous thing.
Okay, from Dan Noyes, a $10 super chat. We are not divided, although the media would have you believe otherwise. If violence escalates, Antifa will lose and the Constitution will win. Make no mistakes. We are united against the totalitarians.
Thank you.
Well, I hope that's true. But I mean, we've seen this mass psychosis. I mean, I'm always kind of of two minds of, the mainstream media is just junk, but actually it's quite powerful. It really influences people. I mean, it does set the United States two parts against each other. So, I mean, what I think is sad in answering that question is that there's so many people that want an authoritarian government in the United States. They're working breathlessly to get there. They want to destroy the Constitution. They want to destroy the culture. They want to destroy society as we understand it. They want to completely remake it. And I can tell you as a historian, social engineering doesn't work. It's a catastrophe, always.
Well, social engineering is incompatible with democracy.
Yeah. The mainstream media would not be so powerful if big tech didn't prop them up so much in today's world.
Correct.
It's unfortunate, but big tech just props them up so much now. If they didn't, then I think you'd have a lot more competition for the viewer than you do now. Unfortunately, mainstream media is completely propped up by big tech. It's unfortunate. Spring Ezel Growth, $5 super chat. Journalist Li Fang was called out by coworker for being racist. He was dragged on Twitter and it gets hot. We're required to pick a side or else.
Well, indeed.
Toxic. Twitter's so toxic.
I was going to say, and I mean, one of the things I dislike also, I mean, I'm going to be straightforward, is all these sort of Twitter mobs that go around and bully people and do all kinds of things. I loathe it. I don't do Twitter, by the way.
Twitter is absolutely toxic. Yeah.
I
don't think any of us are active on Twitter. Actually,
no, never have been.
Actually, the last time I posted something on my Twitter account, I implored people to get off it. Get off it.
Good.
Yeah, Twitter is the worst of the social media. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's full of psychopaths.
Yes.
Yeah. Fanitas Barley, $4.99 super chat. Should the kulaks run for the hill, or is this time arm themselves and stand their ground?
Well, they should certainly stand their ground. And the most important way they can stand their ground is by making sure that they vote properly come November, and that they remain, strong and vocal and speak out between now and November, to make it difficult for anybody who is thinking of usurping power or cancelling that election in November from doing it.
Yeah. Artemis Clyde Frog, £10 super chat. Could Trump lose the White House, but the Republicans win Congress?
I suppose so. I mean, I don't know enough about the politics of the United States. I think it's extremely unlikely, by the way. I would have thought it's much more likely that Trump will win the presidency, and if he wins the presidency, he will pull up the Republicans with him. That seems to me a more likely scenario.
It's possible that he could get reelected and the Republicans could lose the Senate.
Absolutely, that's also true. Which would be a very difficult situation, and which could make things.
I don't think it would be much different. I mean, the GOP is never, with a few, very specific, high-profile individuals, but the GOP is never really. No. They're a traditional. They're a George Bush Senior and Junior party still.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I keep saying this. One of the things that I find really in Trump, one of Trump's weaknesses is that he's never really been able to go beyond his base. And sometimes I get the impression that he doesn't even really try. All right. And I think that that's going to be a major issue in the election coming up here, because I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
Can you say he tried with the black unemployment and reaching out to them? I mean, he really did. When you talk about change, he really did make some headway there.
No, I mean, but see, that's using a different trajectory and a different policy. That's indirectly, he wanted to bring them on board because you have a really healthy economy. Well, that's out the window now. I mean, just forget about that. Okay. So I don't think it's just more like ethnic groups, but I mean around ideas. Okay. And I think that, because I think at the end of the day, a lot of Black Americans are actually really conservative. Hispanics are really conservative too. But the Republican Party and Trump on his own never been able to approach it that way. Okay, and that's why I think conservatism has to completely reimagine these issues here. Stay culturally conservative. That's a winning issue. And polls show that, okay? The Republicans need to stay in that area, but they gotta loosen up a bit about the economy here. And that's a winning proposition, okay? But they just have this inability to reimagine because they're so beholden to their interest and to their donors. And that's really the cancer on reimagining politics in America, and I think much of the Western world.
From Reckless Abandon, $10 super chat. Where is Australian sovereignty when Bill Browder can lie to a parliamentary inquiry, suppress critical submissions, and force us to pass a Magnitsky Act and alienate every country in the region?
Yeah, he's a real con job, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's powerful.
Powerful man,
very litigious.
Absolutely, very litigious, very powerful. But he's just lost a major battle in Germany, where Der Spiegel, which is an important German news magazine, did an exposure of him, and he brought a complaint about it to the German media regulator, which rejected the complaint and said that Der Spiegel's reporting was correct, and also said that that Browder's continued reference to Magnitsky as a lawyer was completely inappropriate. So there we are. He's not winning everywhere.
Yeah. From Nigel 499 super chat, accuracy correction. As of yesterday, total number of unemployment claims passed 42 million since CV pandemic hit the US. Also, how can I become a member? To become a member, just click the join button right under the video and it'll take you through the process of becoming a member there. Any comments on the 42 million unemployment claims?
Like I just said, okay, if that's the number, I know it was about to be released. Maybe it's just been released. Okay, so because yes, it's morning in the U.S. Okay, it's morning right now. So 10 o'clock in the morning now.
Yes, I mean, I have to go and unpack it, but I mean, everybody can see that this is a very difficult time economically for the US. I predict it will pass, but I need to look at these numbers properly.
If those numbers have been released, let us know in the live stream what they are.
They're supposed to be released on Friday, okay? And it's Friday morning in the
Friday
US.
morning now in the US,
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nigel, for that super chat. From Sparky, $5 super chat. CV was the ball weevil for the EU. Our rioters, the ball weevils for CV19. Maybe we'll end up commissioning this of BVs and rioters.
I'm sorry, at my end, you broke up there.
Yes, and also with me, I'm afraid.
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah. CV was the ball weevil for the EU. Our rioters, the ball weevils for CV19. Maybe we'll end up commissioning statues of both CV and rioters.
What a thought. What a horrible thought. But perhaps, let's all pray that doesn't happen.
Yeah. From Toilet Sauce, a €5 super chat. Will you do a program on Ukraine in the near future?
I think we should.
I have a feeling something big is about to go down.
I think we should, actually. I think there's an awful lot going on in Ukraine.
All right. From Sparky, $5 super chat. Deep State gives equipment, grants, and subsidies to local police departments. Deep State doesn't have direct control, but in time, cop culture's influenced.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the more I learn about the United States, the more useful it is for me to know.
I mean, police departments are funded by local cities and towns and stuff like that. I'm not really sure what the connection is here. Okay, I mean, the last time this was mentioned, my concern is that you have a lot of Iraq war and Afghan war material surplus, and the Defense Department is, they're trying to make a buck off of it, and they're trying to sell it to, and they do sell it to local police, which I think is a huge mistake. Okay, militarizing the police, the optics are bad. And, if you have that kind of firepower, somebody eventually is going to use it. Okay.
Dan Noyes, $5 super chat. 90% of the nut jobs in office were the beneficiaries of rigged elections. How many will be reelected in November when voter fraud is eliminated?
Well, I mean, I don't remember the number right now, but it's some incredible number, like 75, 80% of incumbents are reelected. I mean, there are very few contested seats in Congress and in the Senate when we go into election cycles. It's really quite remarkable how many safe seats there are. Okay, and these people become very complacent and they think they're owed it. And I personally believe that they benefit financially because of their positions in government. Okay, and it's influence peddling. Okay.
Okay, from
bribery. Okay.
From Blue Diamond Gem, Mattis is an example. Never meet your heroes.
Oh, sure.
He's never a hero. He's a fraud like the rest of them. Okay, they're all frauds. Okay, they're all losers too.
Yes.
Okay, they're losers. They write their memoirs, how important they are in military history. No, you're a cog in the military-industrial complex, and I'm sure you're cashing out like the rest of them.
Yes, I mean, I've never been much of a fan of Mattis, I have to say, to be honest. I mean, I always thought that he was overrated, grossly overrated. And what I've seen of him recently, I mean, I think he's terrible, actually.
MacArthur said, old generals never die, they just fade away. And, Mattis should just do the same thing. Just fade away and have a walk in the woods with Hillary. Okay.
Agreed.
From Sparky, a $5 super chat. Here in Atlanta, it wasn't as out of control as the MSM made it seem, but at least rioters got their target right. CNN. Very well said. From Kyle Gibson, a $5 super chat. I think we have a police state. I think it is inconsistent to trust our police and law and order and then critically question our foreign policy.
I don't believe it's a police state. Okay, I think, you know, making generalizations about the police. There are certain cities and towns that have a real bad police culture. Okay, so there are a number of cities, you know, really bad police culture, and that's all comes from the top. Okay, I'm absolutely convinced that most people want and do trust the police in their communities. But if you get into poor areas that are very distressed, when, you know, when an integral part of the economy is drugs and stuff like that, it gets that's going into the minutia, and it's a lot more complicated. But that's not every single city and town in America.
Yeah.
All right.
And,
so
and it's not.
we need to stay away from the generalizations here.
Yeah.
But what I have said, you know, kind of the second half of that comment, is that, yeah, this is kind of a forced regime change that's been played out all over the world by the US elites. And a part of the American elite wants to do it in the US now. That's what Russiagate was. What's going on now is an extension of it.
Well, can I just say quickly, which is that the most powerful police agency in the United States is the FBI. That became completely corrupted by its leadership, who used it as part of a political effort to remove the president of the United States. That must create a terrible example for how a police agency can be misused. Now, I do not extend that to the people, the police officers up and down the United States who are struggling to do their jobs at this moment in time, often in terrible and very, very difficult conditions. On the contrary, those people deserve support. And it's interesting that Donald Trump seems to understand that, and his opponents who try to use the FBI against him don't.
Yeah. Can I also just say, it's the problems with police, it's not specific to the US either, guys.
No, not at all.
It happens everywhere in the world, even in small countries. You know, you have problem officers, and some people have problem run-ins with the police. This is true. Yeah. I've seen it in Greece. I see it in Cyprus. This is in Greece. You had a violent police shooting, you know, years ago where they shot a kid, a 14-year-old kid. There were protests in the streets there as well. You have stuff like this happen. So, I mean, this is not specific only to the United States, you know, that you have police problems. But it doesn't mean that all the police are bad in any way, shape, or form.
Let's be really honest. It's a certain personality character trait that people are attracted to the military. And, you know, again, you know, by definition, the police have the legitimate use, right to use force. Okay, that is appealing to some people, not all, but to some.
Yeah, it's not it's not an American thing.
No, absolutely not.
Police issues everywhere in the world,
including in Britain, of course, where the British like to believe that their police is better than in other places. Not entirely true, by the way.
From Life of Brian, $5 super chat. Damn, I meant Chris Hedges. Hayes is an obvious harlot. So it was the super chat on Chris Hayes. Actually, Chris Hedges.
Well, Chris Hedges is a very, very intelligent guy. I mean, and he was a journalist for the New York Times, a foreign correspondent. I don't know if he still has a show on RT, but I've seen some of his shows. I mean, he's he's progressive. Okay, he's really, really progressive. Okay, but his critique of American foreign policy, I essentially agree with.
Yes.
Okay, so. On social issues, that's where I start disagreeing with him. But his critique of American foreign policy is very good. I just kind of wish he would, this is my personal taste, if he would kind of lower the tone a little bit, lower the volume a little bit. I mean, I think he should really focus more on his analysis and not his outrage. Okay?
I completely.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think you've summed him up very well. I have exactly the same views. I met him, by the way, and I was impressed by him. But I also find him sometimes a bit, overly forceful for my taste, anyway.
All right, from Darren Levy. When Trump is reelected, do you think the Democratic Party will collapse into two?
Likely, it's a very good chance.
Oh, yeah, very good chance, absolutely. I mean, it's hardly a party anymore, in my opinion. It's not even a movement. It's a
conglomeration of different people and different factions.
Well, you know, we were saying this before the lockdown. I think that seems like such a long time ago. I'm still in the same. I've been living here all alone with my dogs for 10 weeks, 11 weeks now. And we, you know, when we were before this all started, we were talking about what the progressives are going to do in the election. And I think that it's just as germane now as it was then, because you know, irrespective of the outcome in November, I think more and more progressives are going to say, we're not going to parlay anymore. We're going to have to do it on our own, because they're very, very, very frustrated. Okay.
Yes.
And that would be really good. That would be really good to have a progressive party. And hopefully the Republicans, members, real conservatives, not rhinos, but real conservatives in the Republican Party, and say they should emulate the same thing and have 4 parties. And then hopefully the populists on the left and the populists on the right would be able to get rid of finding this dead wood in this center, okay? And then have a real politics, talk about real politics that affect real people. And believe me, conservative populists and progressive populists, we have a lot in common. There's a lot of disagreement, but there's a lot, the goals are very similar. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, because I think it's in the offering.
Yeah.
All right, from Philip Rodley, £2 super chat, lovely doggo. Peter, guest appearance fee?
No, but you can get it. I'll give you a freebie here. Who wants to come up? Skipster. Who wants to go first? There we go. No, buddy.
Oh boy. Okay. I don't think that dog wants to go.
No, the dog, the other dog sniffed him because he wanted to get in my lap.
All right. From Asav, there he is. All right.
Who's that? You're on a podcast. You see that? No, you don't care. Okay.
He doesn't care. From Asavet MD, $20 super chat. Thanks for all your great work. Thank you very much for that super chat. From Reefy 199, anonymous is against Trump, Xi, and Putin. What the F?
Well,
okay, because it's anonymous. Like, I'm not gonna. I don't know.
Now I know what you say.
No comment.
Okay.
All right. From Mr. Coffee Break, a £5 super chat. Do riots and lawlessness drive right-wing politics, and will this push President Trump's rating? Do riots and lawlessness drive right-wing politics, and will this push President Trump?
Well, I mean, we said this a number of times, and I'm agreeing with Alexander McCures. The thing is that what I question here, and I'm going to be watching, is the timing of it. I mean, if this is a concerted effort, where are we in their game plan? Okay, and Trump is going to have to be very, very careful how he pivots. And he maneuvers his way through this here, because they're not going to give him any breathing room whatsoever. Okay. No. And so, I mean, just an honest criticism, he makes, you know, he says he's going to do this and he's going to do that, but he very rarely does either or anything. Okay. Yes. And I think there could be this feeling that, you know, there's indecision in him, and he shouldn't be there. This is a critical point in the history of the Republic. Critical. Okay. Yes. And we need leadership. Okay. And I want more leadership from not just from Trump, but from the President of the United States, because that's why we have that position.
Yes, can I just say the Financial Times is now reporting on the US job figures, and it confirms unemployment rate in US falls unexpectedly to 13.3%. Okay. Can I just say 13.3% is still extremely high, but it does look as if there was some kind of revival of economic activity in May.
Good. That's good then.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. From Indigo Jones, just tuned in, but local TV shows Cop and Floyd working together. 17 years at minority-owned club by Maya Santa Maria, head of La Raza, activists for sanctuary cities, maybe human and drug trafficking, dirty cops.
Well,
we covered this.
We've covered this in a video, absolutely. And I mean, I think
the Amazing Polly actually covered this really well in one of the videos. Go ahead, Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, I think there's a lot that needs to be investigated, and I come back to what I've said. When you discuss these kind of incidents, and I'm talking now the specific incident that started all of this. When you investigate it properly, you always find that the story is a lot more complicated than it appears.
Well, I mean, look at
the beginning.
Look at George Floyd's rap sheet.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay,
guys.
the thing is here is that there are no good actors in this.
Yeah.
And that's what's really sad. And then you have politicos on all sides trying to find virtue. And it's just a tragedy all the way around. It was a bad cop, and you had George Floyd with a pretty a criminalized history. Okay, let's face it. And when the encounter happened, he was committing a crime. Okay, again, what we saw on video, it's just it's unconscionable. Okay, no individual should die in the custody of the police. That's simply wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a nightclub guy's a nightclub, laundering money, involved in drugs and all kinds of stuff. It's not a big surprise. It's not a big surprise.
It's not a surprise at all. I mean, it goes on all the time. I mean, again, I should say that one of the, I was involved in a court case which was once brought against a nightclub, very well-known nightclub in London, where exactly that was going on.
Yeah. CDN 89 is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, CDN 89. From Sazgirl 73, perhaps this is a move, among others, to force a federal police force.
I think there will be great resistance to that, to be honest.
The reason why there is no federal police force is, and it's actually a Cold War relic, is that there was a fear that if you had a nationwide police force, that it would be easily corrupted. Okay, so that having a decentralized police force they thought was more responsible to individual communities. Okay, and the FBI fought tooth and nail to make sure there was never, because they look at themselves as a premier law enforcement agency. They didn't want a federalized police force.
Yes.
From Sparky, $2 super chat, submission provokes predatory behavior in the evil.
Absolutely. Yeah. It provokes and tempts. It does exactly that.
Yeah. From GEC 1112, Australian $10. Previous chat regarding Australia is not true. All that's happened is the NSW Supreme Court confirmed a ban on BLM protest in Sydney tomorrow. This is because of CV19 health risks and already existing lockdown policy law.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yes.
Right, thank you for that. Super chat from Reality Check. Peter agreed the police have been demonized in the UK too, and McPherson report set in stone.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that also, by the way. I mean, again, what happened in the case that led to the McPherson report, which again I remember very, very well, was terrible. The police officers did not investigate properly the investigation of a young black man who had been killed by white fascist, racist youths. This is absolutely true. It was deeply, deeply shocking. But I did feel that the conclusion of that report, which is that the police in London were institutionally racist, I thought at the time that went too far. I mean, and I know a lot of people who were familiar with the police system who thought
it's really hard to make that case for the United States when you have so many black and brown people in uniform. I mean, I've never really gotten my head around that. Okay?
Yes. Well, I mean, this happened quite a long time ago. The Stephen Lawrence case happened quite a long time ago in Britain now. But as I said, I thought it went too far. I mean, I thought that it did not characterize the police as I knew it.
Okay, Alexander, £5 super chat. Hi guys, my son has been following this nonsense going on in America, and he has just said to me he is genuinely scared that it will come to the UK.
Yeah. I mean, the protests have, and we have a history of rioting in Britain. I mean, it's, as I said, when I said I witnessed a riot, it was in Britain I witnessed it, not in Greece.
All right, thank you for that super chat. From Martial Law, €10 super chat. Do you think this is the death throes of the globalist cabal? Is this their Hail Mary pass to stop Trump succeeding in the November election? Love the show, guys. My go-to for news. Mug on its way.
But Trump is not against globalization, you guys. I mean, this is a binary here. I mean, Trump worked with the first bailout stimulus. I mean, again, the globalists were taken care of first, okay? That's what makes Trump such a complicated character, okay? Because on one hand, he has a populist streak to him. That's what got him elected, for goodness sake. But he defaults to power, the established power, way too often. I mean, do you remember the whole thing about, you know, what was it? I guess it was December 2018 when we're getting out of Syria. I mean, we were over the moon, remember? And then, you know, his own administration, you know, clawed it back. All right. So, I mean, you know, Trump versus globalization, that's a binary that I don't think carries much water. You know, where you can look at like a trade and stuff like that, immigration, he's pushing against globalized trends there. But when it comes to the economy, and this is where I'm very disappointed, maybe Trump couldn't do it because he's the president, but he could have had his surrogates in the Senate, for example, try to get to the left of Biden. I mean, Trump went left of Hillary and it worked, okay? So, I mean, in looking at Trump, the Trump administration and globalization, there's no direct confrontation, unfortunately.
Why, question, Peter, why do people always say that Trump needs to get to the left of Biden? I never understood that. Why? I mean,
no, it's very, very simple, Alex, okay? Because over the last 6 weeks, one myth is—
Does America want economic policy?
Let me explain. You know, 10 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, remember, in our lifetime, there's no money for it. There's no money for that. There's no money for this. We can't do that because there's no money for it. Well, apparently there's plenty of money for everything right now, okay? What I'm saying is guaranteeing payrolls for 6 months, okay? Because in America, if you're on the payroll, you get your health insurance, okay? Because in the US, they have an arcane, stupid medical system, all right? And what I'm saying is you keep people in their jobs. How much would that cost? It'd be a pretty penny, but no more than what's being spent now, okay? And what I'm saying is that, in trying to echoing what Alexander McCure is saying, once we get out of this slump, once we know where we stand, and apparently a number of businesses understand that they are out of the worst of the slump and they're starting to hire. What I'm saying is keep people, I mean, if you tell people you can't work, you have to do something in return. Okay, and that's what they should have done. It should have been calibrated, where, you know, when seeing what's happening with the economy. And I'm not saying that you pay people's payroll forever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for an extraordinary amount of time. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer didn't have time to think about that. Okay, and then you had the GOP say, "Well, we'll see how it works out." Okay, this would have been a master move, a master event. And you know what? It would have been really hard to go against. It'd be really hard. And so I think there was a missed opportunity. And I think also is that during those weeks when they were making up the stimulus relief packages, the White House was remarkably quiet, which I thought was unconscionable. He should have taken the lead. He didn't. He followed Nancy and Chuck, which was a tactical mistake. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, because I know Jimmy Dore says that all the time too, that Trump, you know, you have to get to the left. So you're saying, you're explaining it as just in that certain instance.
Yes.
With the pandemic, Trump should have done something to the left. Otherwise, if, say, for example, you didn't have the pandemic, then Trump doesn't need to run to the left on an economic policy.
Right. I mean, that's like trying to move all the chess pieces back. Okay, 15. I don't know. Okay, that's almost impossible to say because I don't know what other things might have happened. But what I'm just saying is that, you know, he could have torn a page from FDR. Okay, because all the left wants Joe Biden to be the new FDR. Oh, for God's sake, Trump could have done it himself. Okay, he could have saved the quote unquote gains, topic for another podcast, but he could have saved the gains of his economic gains of his presidency. Now they're all in tatters right now. He can't run on that. Who would? Okay. So it would have been that one thing. Look, give all your buddies and cronies all the money they want. There's nothing that's going to stop that. What I'm just saying is a segment of society that you could have just been laser focused. I'm going to make sure these people don't suffer. Okay, and for 6 months, 9 months, and then you slowly release it. Okay, Because, you know, giving all these power to the banks and all that, they cherry pick, they pick out their friends. Okay, and they're just, you know, and plus with this payroll relief program, everybody's on it, okay? IRS knows everybody's number. I mean, if you declared taxes for the last 3 years, you'd be eligible. That system is, that's why it exists. It exists to extract income from people, but you can actually reverse the trend, okay? For me, this was very, very simple. That's what I'm just saying. I'm not saying that, you know, Trump should become a socialist, no. What I'm saying is,
it's good because you hear it a lot, because you hear that argument a lot that, you know, Trump should have run to the, and anyway, it's good that you explained it because it adds some clarity to what is meant by that and the missed opportunity that he had. All right. And thank you for that super chat, by the way, from Dan, from Dan Noyes, a $10 super chat. The 60s was much more turbulent. Of my personal friends, one organized a riot, one joined the Weathermen, and one who was in law school received a 25-year sentence for possession of one joint.
Well, there you go. I mean, I just remember the 60s and the early 70s, and they were very turbulent. I agree, by the way. I think we're not yet there. But I'm going to say something else. The political system, the constitutional and the system of the United States was much stronger in the 60s than it is today. What Peter was saying about Watergate is absolutely true. So yes, they were more turbulent, but the institutions of the state were stronger.
Yeah, that's so well said. And plus, in the 1960s, you didn't have such a partisan media.
And you didn't have social media and the internet to amplify everything.
Yes.
And you know what? I mean, and if you look at the reactions, I mean, the people, studies have shown that peaceful protesting was actually something that was very attractive to the majority of the electorate, but people used violence. They soured on it very, very quickly. And you know, the media didn't pick winners. They just showed. And you decide. Well, the media now is telling you what to think or won't show you. I mean, because I saw an interview, Joe Rogan interviewed Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty. And I suggest people take a look at it. It's a 3-hour investment, but it's an interesting program. Is that you could just see, and I think the world of Crystal, I think she's so smart, but I think she's misguided on a number of things. I got the impression that she just didn't want to see, she doesn't want those videos of the violence. She doesn't want to absorb. All she wants to see is the police hitting people. Okay, and I saw everything. It's all, as Alexander Makiris puts it, when those situations are really, really scary because it's a Hobbesian war, everyone against everyone. It's scary. Okay, and that is the difference. You know, actually, the 60s in a way you can't compare it because you had amazing economic growth. Yes. All boats were rising. Literally, all boats were rising, and now it's more complicated because in the 60s, it wasn't per se a class issue. It really was race. And the civil rights achieved a lot of great things, really. But see, this is what these warriors, these activists, see, the civil rights movement has been absorbed, okay? I mean, Martin Luther King was a great man, you know? I mean, most white people think that in America today. I think that's just common sense, okay? But see, this is this kind of revolutionary fervor that people need to grab onto. And that's why these well-educated whites from East and West Coast, you know, they want to have their revolution, okay? And it's intensely anti-political. I'm talking about Antifa-like people, okay? And what they want is their own revolution because it gives them a sense of meaning, because American culture on a daily basis, it just degrades our culture, degrades faith, degrades traditions, and so this is what they've absorbed, and this is what their revolutionary moment, which is really, it's really perverse, because the civil rights activists were brave people. These activists are cowards.
Yes. Well, can I just say something about Martin Luther King? Martin Luther King, whom I just remember, he's just within the range of my political memory, but obviously I don't remember him very well, but I've studied him. He was a Christian. He was believed in non-violent action. He was against imperialist wars, and he was a supporter of the constitutional system of the United States. He is completely against all the things that we have been talking about on this program, things that, you know, people like Antifa and all that stand for. So let's be very clear about Martin Luther King, because I agree, his legacy and what he stands for has been completely misappropriated.
Good point. From Dan Noyes, the difference is today that this crisis is state-sponsored, but we have information and Trump.
Well, that's a really smart point, because this is, like I said, this is a pre-revolutionary movement that is state-driven against the working class. Now, get your head around that, because it's always the working class uprising. You know, that's the paradigm that we've been told. That's the Marxian paradigm. And no, it's reversed. It's state-sponsored, backed up by the media, and it's going against what traditionally would be the revolutionary agents, okay, and this is a pre-revolutionary attack on working people, of all colors.
From Kaloj 777, what I meant to say was one world government. I think everyone can agree the best we can do is assist in opening as many eyes as we can.
Yes.
Well, I mean, what does a global government mean? I mean, I'd like to see more internationalization of things, of cooperation. I want to see the United States stop using sanctions as a political weapon. I want to see the US stop using the dollar as a political weapon. It's like, you know, and this is opening up a whole can of worms, I know, for some people, but Hong Kong is in China. It's their problem, okay? That's their problem. And there's nothing the US and the West should do about it, because it only makes things worse, okay? The internationalization, as Alexander Makiris pointed out earlier, about dealing with pandemics, instead of, we should be working together. The US leaving the World Health Organization is stupid. It's inane, okay? First of all, it's not heavily funded. And what does the World Health Organization actually do? It shares information. If the World Health Organization has issues, reform it. But you can't reform it if you're not in it. Yeah. It's just ridiculous, juvenile, knee-jerk reaction. I was really just at a loss on that.
My dog is getting very.
Yeah, my dogs too. I got to.
What I simply wanted to say is globalization, which, in my opinion, I mean, there is an element of, if not exactly of government, certainly of control by a small group of people. That kind of globalization makes international cooperation more difficult, because inevitably it provokes resistance. So I think that if we have a proper functioning international system in which sovereign states respect each other and observe international law in their relations with each other, then we will find ourselves in a much better place than in the place we're in now.
From CDN 89, a $5 super chat. Last night, Twitter banned Trump's healing tribute post. Then CNN, 10 minutes later or so, CNN said they haven't seen Trump try to calm the people. They're working in sync.
Well, I mean, you're talking about
Twitter and CNN, look, like I said before, big tech and mainstream media are working in sync. Go ahead.
Well, absolutely.
No doubt about that.
But I mean, it astonishes me when people talk about calming the people, when what you're getting out of CNN and out of so many people who are allowed to tweet on Twitter is the opposite. They're not calming the situation. They are inciting it. They're making it worse. And, you know, ganging up on Trump, it's just once again an example of setting the reality on its head.
Yeah, I agree. From Hugh Evans, a €10 super chat. How were Michael Flynn's possible intentions as national security advisor so threatening to the deep state as to attract such a vehement attack on him? Or was it only done to get at Donald Trump?
I think it was primarily and overwhelmingly done to get at Donald Trump. I mean, Flynn did have his enemies within the deep state. He wanted to change policy towards Syria. He wanted to improve relations with Russia. He wanted to cooperate with the Russians in fighting international terrorism in the Middle East. He wanted to do various things which people in the deep state didn't want to do. And there are rumors, which are probably true, that he also wanted to carry out a radical reorganization of the US intelligence system. And he wanted to take away from the CIA its role in carrying out covert activity, in other words, destabilizing governments. So I think that principally it was about Trump, but I do think that there were aspects of what Flynn was up to, which, as I said, many deep state actors didn't like. And of course, beyond and above that, there was one particular individual who had a specific animus against Flynn, and that was the man who was president of the United States, who was Barack Obama. Now, we've discussed this a lot, Alex and I, in our videos, and we can talk about that again, but that's a big subject.
Everything Alexander Mercouris I agree with, except for you forgot one thing. Flynn was in a position to reveal all of their conspiratorial behavior.
Indeed.
Okay. What did they want? Because he knew how the intelligence how the intelligence community operated, and they would have been able to figure out who they were targeting. It would have all been revealed, and so they wanted to hit him in the knees, get him pushed aside. Sessions had recused himself. That's how they were able to keep the momentum going. He would have exposed them, but everything else Alexander Mercouris said is spot on.
Right, from GEC 1112. CV lock and riots destroying small business.
I'm feeding my dog.
Employers are large businesses who can enforce immunity passports and the new normal. Smart cities allowing surveillance state. 1984 is close.
Well, I mean, the growth and expansion of intelligence and surveillance has been one of the most worrying things in the United States and around the world in the last 20 years. And of course, what's happened with the CV crisis, that has extraordinarily accelerated it. That there's no question.
From Brave New Perth, $10 super chat. Alexander Dugan and the Eurasianist movement have written extensively on strategically creating social unrest within America through their racial extremist groups, New Resistance and Arctogaea.
Well, Dugan may be writing all kinds of things as a academic in Moscow, but let me assure you, I don't think anybody in the United States amongst the people who are writing read them. And I'm certainly can absolutely definitely say that the Russian government has nothing to do with him either. Dugan is an interesting man. He's got some strange ideas. Some of them I agree with, many of them I don't, but he is not the great figure, the great intellectual figure that many people in the West take him for. And as for Eurasianism within Russia is a very, very large concept. Dugan is not its creator. Many other people who think about Eurasianism, and they're not necessarily people who like Dugan also. So, let's keep this in context, and let's not look at what the Russians are all about. I mean, the Russian hand is not present in any of this in the United States.
Okay,
we've wasted enough time on Dugan. Let's keep
going. We got some more Dugan super chats. Anyway, let's see.
Any question on this, Sean? I don't know what it is.
Reckless Abandon, a $5 super chat. What's the best way to contact the Duran if I have a story for you? Editor at theduran.com.
Absolutely.
Send an email. Editor at theduran.com as you hear it. It is written.
Yeah.
From Sparky, a $5 super chat. Dad knew Daddy King. Daddy King and Jr. were Republicans along with most blacks until JFK. Contrary to popular belief, Lincoln was a Republican.
He was a Republican. Of course, he was. He was the first Republican president. No question.
Thank you for that super chat. From Brave New Perth, Dugan and Eurasianist movement are plotting a color revolution within Turkey with the help of Dogu Perinçek, Semi Kare, Yunus Soner, and Fikret Akfirat.
the idea that Dugan is capable of plotting a color revolution, he doesn't have that kind of knowledge. He doesn't have that kind of skill. I mean, he's a professor. He's got all kinds of ideas bubbling away. But as I said, we mustn't overstate his importance. I mean, people just overstate it to a wild degree.
Yeah. From Thomas Merzanis, £5 super chat. What are your thoughts on white Europeans to become ethnic minorities in Western Europe, Australia, and North America by the 2060s?
I don't know whether it's going to happen. There are certainly some people who want to see it happen. And if you go to France, for example, it seems to be much more of an issue there. I don't think it's going to happen.
You don't think it's going to happen?
No, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that things will change radically long before it does.
Okay, from Brave New Perth, a $5 super chat. Eurasianist movement is a terrorist organization that has been arming and financing terrorists and radical political extremists in Europe for years.
No, I don't. I mean, that's, again, I mean, you mustn't believe all the stories that are circulated about Dugan. Lots of things are said about Dugan. Dugan isn't like that. And as I said, Eurasianism isn't a movement in Russia. It's an idea. I mean, we want to be very clear about that.
We got a few more Eurasianist super chats. Thank you for those super chats, though, Brave New Perth. We appreciate it. From Smiley Big about COVID, how is it possible to develop a vaccine for a disease that is not completely understood? Isn't that dangerous? How will that play out?
It's extremely dangerous, and I'm worried that that corners are being cut in the rush to do it. And by the way, can I just say something? I mean, I've been hearing about people in Russia. The Russian government is talking about having a vaccine ready by July. I mean, that frankly alarms me. I don't believe a vaccine can be ready by July. I mean, that seems to me extraordinarily wild. And I don't believe that a vaccine that has been prepared so fast is either necessarily effective or entirely safe. So, I'm much more skeptical about vaccines as a solution to this problem of CV than some people seem to be.
All right. From Brave New Perth, a $5 super chat. Mark Sloboda is a Eurasianist. He is Alexander Dugan's right-hand man. He is all for Eurasianism and the multipolar order.
They fell out some time ago, as I understand.
True at all. Not true at all.
Not at all, yeah.
All right, from JC Nell, JC Nell is a new member of the Duran community. Thank you, JC Nell, for joining the community. From Sparky, if Floyd's death hadn't sparked Helter Skelter plan, something else would have, but historical connection between Floyd and his killer is interesting.
It is very interesting, and as I said, it certainly needs to be looked into, and I'm sure that there is something to find out there if people want to look.
This is going to be, the prosecutor was vilified for equivocating about giving charges out, and now we're finding out this is a more complicated story. Okay, yeah. I mean, the backstory is getting more and more complicated. The death is real; it happened, and we saw it. Okay,
yes.
So that's no question. Okay, yeah. But again, these people, justice delayed is justice denied. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, and I agree with that. But rushing to justice can be justice denied too.
Yeah. From Dan Noy as a $5 super chat. Federalization of police or any agency just enables one-stop shopping for the lobbyists. Much harder to lobby 50 states.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah. Thank you for that super chat, Dan. From Darren Alevi, any thoughts on the UK mainstream media propping up deep state Starmer as the next UK prime minister?
Well, I think that's a very good point, actually. It's a huge subject, and I think we really do need to talk about Starmer in a proper video again. Lots of video subjects coming up in this program. Starmer was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. He was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service when the Crown Prosecution Service was going after Julian Assange. And there were all kinds of evidence that's now come to light that they were also actively involved in colluding with the Swedish authorities to keep the Swedish case on track and to keep Assange basically in detention in the embassy. So Starmer certainly has a past there, and it's not one that you will read in the British media. The British media doesn't touch it. On the contrary, they seem to be promoting him very, very much. So yes, he does seem to me to be someone who is seen as reliable, or as the British like to say, sound. And yes, he is being backed and he is being supported. The one thing I'm going to say is, though, I don't think he's cutting through. I think he's someone who is not actually gaining a great deal of traction in British society in the way that, let's say, by contrast, Jeremy Corbyn did. I can remember that Jeremy Corbyn would come along and hundreds of people or thousands of people will turn out to hear him speak. They're certainly not doing that for Starmer. So he's been promoted. He's got an interesting past. I don't think he is cutting through yet.
Okay, from Reefy00, Anonymous is a left version of Q and has 7.4 million followers on Twitter. A narrative is being used to control right and left. Gang,
yes.
counter, gang, British psyops.
Yes. Well, as I said, I don't know very much about Anonymous. I've seen some of the stories they've leaked, but I don't really know very much about them. But none of what you say would surprise me at all.
Right, from Indigo Jones, a $5 super chat. Should Dem cities be allowed to cut police until they beg and abandon, or should Trump step in?
No, he's got to step in. I mean, if violence continues, it is his duty to step in. I think governments that retreat from upholding order and law and order, that is when they start to lose legitimacy and authority. People start saying, well, what is this government doing for us? And should we actually look for alternatives? So definitely he should step in. That's my own view.
Okay, from Reality Check 499 AM, you mentioned a film with Michael Caine yesterday in connection with Floyd's riots. What was the film?
Do you know, I'm going to try and find out, but it is an interesting film. It's Michael Caine plays an ex-British Army officer, a corporal actually, sorry, who served in Northern Ireland. He's living on a housing estate in London. The housing estate is taken over by drugs gangs, by a drug gang. He engages in some, shall we say, extra legal activity. The police start to close in and start making investigations and inquiries. And the people who are running the drugs gang, in order to stop the police carrying through with those investigations, orchestrates a riot, a violent riot. Now, to my certain knowledge, that does actually happen in Britain. That is a real event. That's sorry, real. The film is not a real event, but that is a real, completely real scenario.
Okay, from Sparky, a $5 super chat. Amplifying what some in the chat are saying, apparently retired police captain David Duran was a black life, which didn't matter, at least to libs.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. From Dan Noyes, a $5 super chat. Global government's afraid of accountability. My city representative listens to me a hell of a lot more than my U.S. senator.
Yep.
Yes. I'm sure that's true.
Very true. From Indigo Jones, a $5 super chat. Feinstein is complaining about Senate's unbridled authority to go after Obama-era officials. Will it be effective?
You mean Mitch Feinstein?
No,
Diane Feinstein. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. The reason is I've actually been getting messages from Mitch as we've been speaking. So anyway, well, I mean, I think that looks like a massive constitutional overreach. I've never thought, frankly, that Diane Feinstein was the sharpest knife in the drawer. That's a way of saying in Britain that she's not perhaps the cleverest person around. And this seems to me a case of that. I don't think that's going to work.
Okay, from Flying Boar, $5 super chat. Update on Nord Stream 2.
Yes, the United States has been trying to impose, or at least people like Ted Cruz want to impose more sanctions now to try and stop Nord Stream 2. This is in light of the fact that these two Russian ships, pipeline ships, are now there and about to start work. And as I understand it, the German government has just issued a statement just a short while ago, just a few hours ago, saying that they oppose extraterritorial sanctions on Nord Stream 2 and that they want to see it finished. I predict it will be finished within the next few weeks.
All right, Ziphius, €5 super chat. 80% of the 1917 Bolsheviks were of a specific ethnic group. Can we say the same thing for today's US events?
No, well, that isn't true. That's a story that's often peddled about the Bolsheviks. They came from many different ethnicities, and in fact, most of the members of the party were actually Russians. Most of them were actually ethnic Russians, contrary to what you say. I don't think that this is a single group within the United States in ethnic terms. What I think it is a single group in ideological terms, which is a different thing. And by the way, I've just found out what the name of the Michael Caine film is. It's Harry Brown. Harry Brown, 2009.
Sparky sent a super chat and said, was it Get Carter? Oh,
no, it's not Get Carter. Get Carter's a great, Get Carter, by the way, is a great film, one of the great British gangster movies. But this is Harry Brown.
All right, 3 more super chats. Reckless Abandon, will the economic problems in the West lead to a defunding of the thousands of paid think tank trolls whose job it is to demonize Russia and Putin?
I wish. I'm going to make a guess. They're probably the last people who are going to see their funding cut off. Health services, police systems, whatever, everything else. But they will be there, paid to their ears and churning out all their nonsense.
From Flying Boar, this rioting and looting you see in America is communists taking over of the country and the West.
Some of the people who are involved, and certainly in Antifa, I mean, you could certainly qualify them with that name. I mean, ideologically, that is exactly what they are. The only thing I would say is that, if you're talking about communists of, European type communists that are around now would probably hate those people, because most of them in America, I would guess, are very much in the Trotskyist wing of the movement. So there's all those ideological factional tensions that exist between communists too.
Okay, from Dimitri at 1999 super chat, if an American with Greek citizenship came to Greece with $300,000 to $400,000, what advice would you give him for how to invest the money in Greece in order to live comfortably, take advantage of a downturn?
Goodness, well, I mean, you could buy yourself a place, I suppose, a place near the sea. I'm sure you could do pretty well with that kind of money in Greece.
I wouldn't buy real estate in Greece now.
You wouldn't buy real estate.
No.
I mean, Alex is probably more up to date with this. It's high, is it? Okay, gosh.
Yeah, it's very high. Yeah, email me, Dimitri, and maybe I could help you out there. Just email me, alex@theduran.com.
And don't overlook Cyprus, which is a beautiful country.
Yeah, Greece is tricky to invest in. There's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy. It's very difficult. From Thomas Merzanis, is the Greek army conscription a waste of time? It depends.
Well, indeed, exactly.
The Greek army, it depends.
Yeah, there are parts of the Greek army which are apparently quite good.
Depends on the person. No, it's a very good army.
And the Air Force is very good.
From the Air Force is very good. From Dan Noye as a $5 super chat. Dems and LBJ in particular shot down the 1957 Civil Rights Act, which was later passed by LBJ as president in order to swindle the black votes to the Dems.
Yeah, the story of the civil rights movement.
57?
Well, I don't know about 57, but certainly LBJ, before he became president, did not have a good record on civil rights issues, and that's putting it.
Yeah, but he ended up being the greatest civil rights president.
Well, absolutely, he was. I mean, give credit where it's due. He did it. I mean, he did it as a Texan from the South.
If you want kind of a simplistic history of that, there's a film at what's his name? Brian. What's the guy that was in Breaking Bad?
Brian
Cranston.
Cranston, yeah. Cranston.
Right. And he plays LBJ in a film called All the Way. It's a play on All the Way with LBJ, and it really shows his encounters with Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders. So it's a very interesting film, and of course the acting is wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. The final super chats, guys. The war on poverty ended up being the war for poverty, destroying black families and prosperity. From Dan Noyes, super chat.
Well, Quite possible. Yeah, well said.
Well said. No, well said. From Reality Check, to find out the truth behind vaccine development, read Dr. Judy Mikovits's book, Plague of Corruption. She's a brilliant scientist involved with BSL Labs. Yes, that movie is all over the place, actually, on alternative social media. You won't find it on mainstream social media. And from Dan Noya is the final super chat. You kids are great. Love the Duran. And we'll leave it with that.
I haven't been called a kid for a long time.
We'll leave it there. Thank you, Dan, for that super chat. Thank you, everyone, for your super chats and for all your comments in the live stream. Absolutely. Any final, and this was a long one, guys, but any final?
You think?
It was good. There was a lot to cover, but we covered it.
Just to round out one little point, which I started with, it was in the 1950s, and it was Little Rock, Arkansas, where Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne Division to protect 9 black teenagers integrating into a public school. So the United States military has been used within the United States. What people are saying that this is absolutely unconstitutional is simply not true. What is going to happen? What are we going to be looking at? We're going to be certainly looking at the events in the United States, which, as Alex correctly said, they've spilled out around the world. There's going to be a big protest in London. I know that the academic world, the universities in Britain, are absolutely on fever around this issue. So there's an awful lot going to happen within the next week and days revolving around this.
All right, Peter, any final?
I'll just say this. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, yes, tomorrow.
I mean, online.
Yes. From Sparky, one final super chat. Truman was an outward racist, but moved blacks forward by integrating the military.
Well,
I wouldn't say he was an outward racist. I mean, he was kind of a garden variety racist. Yeah. I mean, there was the integration of, I think wasn't it under Truman when they had the integration of the armed forces? I think it was under Truman. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Spartan Warrior Queen, thank you very much for moderating before I
forget.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
To
thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. All right, guys, that's it. Let's wrap it up.
All right.
Call it a day and get to our weekends. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. Have a good Friday and have a good weekend ahead. Take care.